Chapter 955. My young master has ordered the two of us to take your head. I'm sorry. Do it. The two middle-aged men looked at each other and took out their weapons, ready to attack Sun Shangxiang. Wait a minute. Who is your young master? Sun Shangxiang suddenly asked. I'll let you know before you die. Our young master is the grandson of the Black Sword sect's Hong Wujian, Hong Qingyun. The two men answered directly. Obviously, the two of them were full of confidence in their strength. Okay, you can die now. Hearing the two men's words, Sun Shangxiang nodded, and suddenly the flexible sword in his hand danced. Shameless boasting. Hearing Sun Shangxiang's words, the two men snorted coldly, and then martial arts power burst out from their bodies. Powerful martial arts power instantly filled the two men's bodies. The two of them held long swords and waved them, sweeping up waves of sword chi, and attacked Sun Shangxiang. In an instant, the two powerful sword chi formed a cage, wrapping Sun Shangxiang in it. If it was an ordinary 10th Order Demon Emperor, it was estimated that they would not be able to escape from a sword chi cage. From this, it could be seen that the strength of these two Demon Emperors was really not weak. Seeing this scene, Sun Shangxiang's subordinates instantly shouted for Sun Shangxiang, worried about him. Two lords, you can do it. The Bright Moon City's official shouted happily. After all, if the two Demon Emperors were defeated, he would not have a good time. But the current situation was obviously the two Demon Emperors had the advantage. He was very much looking forward to seeing the two Demon Emperors behead Sun Shangxiang into a meat paste. While the onlookers were nervous and looking forward to it, the two men's attacks suddenly fell. But no matter how strong the two men's attacks were, Sun Shangxiang did not care. Insignificant skill. Looking at the two men's attacks, Sun Shangxiang's face did not have the slightest panic, and he could not help but snort disdainfully. Boom! At this time, Sun Shangxiang's flexible sword suddenly burst out with powerful spiritual power. Powerful spiritual energy instantly spread out in all directions. With an unstoppable momentum, it instantly shattered the sword chi of the two Demon Emperors. Puff, puff, you're a spiritualist. How is this possible? The attacks of the two Demon Emperors were easily neutralized by Sun Shangxiang. Furthermore, the counterattack of the spiritual energy was something they could not resolve. The two Demon Emperors suffered heavy injuries at the same time, and they both spat out a mouthful of blood. The two of them looked at Sun Shangxiang with shock and fear in their eyes. Roar! The marshal is mighty. The marshal is mighty. The marshal is mighty. Seeing this, Sun Shangxiang's subordinates shouted in unison. This, on the other hand, the excitement on the faces of the officials of Bright Moon City had vanished, replaced by panic. Since you can die in peace. Sun Shangxiang did not deny his identity as a spiritualist. As soon as Sun Shangxiang finished speaking, the flexible sword danced, and the gorgeous spiritual energy once again attacked the two Demon Emperors. No! Stop! You can't kill us. We are from the Black Sword sect. If you kill us, you won't have a good ending. The two Demon Emperors knew that they were definitely no match for a spiritualist. Even the lowest level of the Atman body realm, they were no match for him. This was because the difference between the power of martial arts and spiritual energy was still very huge. If threatening me is useful, then it's a waste of my own cultivation. Sun Shangxiang obviously didn't care about the words of the two. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, there was the sound of clothes tearing. The clothes of the two Demon Emperors were completely torn, and under their clothes, there were already dense wounds. You're so vicious. The two of them were cold as they stared at Sun Shangxiang. Die! Sun Shangxiang's voice sank. Under the desperate gazes of the two Demon Emperors, the sword chi pierced through their throats. Kill! After killing the two of them, Sun Shangxiang pointed his sword at Moon City. Kill! The army was completely inspired by the scene of Sun Shangxiang. Then, they rushed toward Bright Moon City aggressively. How could this be? It's over. The officials of Bright Moon City stood on the city wall, their faces pale. Just now, you seem to be very arrogant. At this moment, the official suddenly heard a voice in his ear. Then, he turned around and saw an exquisite beauty reflected in his eyes. He wanted to speak in a panic, but before he could say anything, Sun Shangxiang had already made his move, the flexible sword piercing through his throat. Go and report to the Lord. Say that the Black Sword sect has interfered. After killing the official, Sun Shangxiang turned around and said to the general, "What? The Black Sword sect is really haunting us." Hearing the general's words, Yi Hao said in dissatisfaction. After careful calculation, he had already clashed with the Black Sword sect many times. Black Sword sect, you're courting death this time. Yi Hao's eyes darkened. It was obvious that he had given the Black Sword sect a death sentence. Order Sun Shangxiang to kill the 4 million troops at the fastest speed and break into the imperial capital. Yi Hao directly ordered the general again. Yi Hao also didn't expect that things would go so smoothly, but halfway through, there would be a Changyaojin. Yi Hao believed that something must have happened for the Black Sword sect to suddenly intervene. Therefore, in order to prevent any more trouble, Yi Hao couldn't wait. What? The Black Sword sect is really haunting us. Hearing the general's words, Yi Hao said in dissatisfaction. After careful calculation, he had already clashed with the Black Sword sect many times. Black Sword sect, you're courting death this time. Yi Hao's eyes darkened. It was obvious that he had given the Black Sword sect a death sentence. Order Sun Shangxiang to kill the 4 million troops at the fastest speed and break into the imperial capital. Yi Hao directly ordered the general again. Yi Hao also didn't expect that things would go so smoothly, but halfway through, there would be a Changyaojin. Yi Hao believed that something must have happened for the Black Sword sect to suddenly intervene. Therefore, in order to prevent any more trouble, Yi Hao couldn't wait. What? The Black Sword sect is really like a lingering spirit. Hearing the general's words, Yi Hao said in dissatisfaction. After careful calculation, he had already clashed with the Black Sword sect many times. Black Sword sect, you're courting death this time. Yi Hao's eyes darkened. It was obvious that he had given the Black Sword sect a death sentence. Order Sun Shangxiang to kill the 4 million troops at the fastest speed and break into the imperial capital. Yi Hao directly ordered the general again. Yi Hao also didn't expect that things would go so smoothly, but halfway through, there would be a Changyaojin. Yi Hao believed that something must have happened for the Black Sword sect to suddenly intervene. Chapter 956. Go and tell Song Xiaotian that I will give the second princess's army to him. Sun Shangxiang looked at the direction of the second princess's army and ordered his subordinates. Yes. Hearing Sun Shangxiang's order, his subordinates immediately agreed. Then, Sun Shangxiang's gaze landed on the north of Bright Moon City, where the first princess's army was. Everyone, I want to wipe out the entire 5 million enemy army. Do you have any objections? Sun Shangxiang drew a circle on the sand table and asked. Everyone looked at the circle that Sun Shangxiang drew and spoke one by one. How can a mere 5 million mixed army be a match for our 2 million regular army? Under the leadership of the marshal, wiping out the 5 million mixed army is not a problem at all. As long as we surround these 5 million soldiers like dumplings, they won't be able to escape even if they have wings. Hearing the discussions of the generals, Sun Shangxiang nodded his head in satisfaction and suddenly shouted, "That's good. Generals, listen to my orders." "We will listen to your orders." Everyone immediately looked at Sun Shangxiang respectfully. The 1st and 2nd legions, a total of 400,000 soldiers, ambush here. This is the only way out for the enemy to escape. The 3rd and 4th legions, attack from the front. The 5th and 6th legions, attack from the left. The 7th and 8th legions, attack from the right. The 9th and 10th legions, attack from the back. Do you all understand? Sun Shangxiang finished assigning the tasks, and then looked at everyone. Understood. Everyone shouted in unison. Good. Let's go and wipe out the enemy. Then, Sun Shangxiang waved his arm and waved it. Marshal Sun said that he will leave the 5 million soldiers of the second princess to you to deal with. A general received Sun Shangxiang's order and said to Song Xiaotian, Haha, Marshal Sun is really generous. My hands have been itching for a long time. Hearing his subordinate's words, Song Xiaotian immediately laughed out loud. Then, Song Xiaotian immediately walked to the sand table and said with a serious face, "Gather all the generals. I want to assign tasks." To be honest, Song Xiaotian was actually very nervous. This was because he was worried that he would not be able to wipe out the second princess's army. If it was his 1 million soldiers, he would not be worried at all. However, Sun Shangxiang had conquered so many cities and had to have soldiers to guard them. Although each city did not need many soldiers temporarily, they still had to send 300,000 to 400,000 soldiers. Therefore, he only had slightly more than 600,000 soldiers in his hands. Although the second princess's army was very weak. However, the enemy had too many people. They were going to use 600,000 troops to encircle and suppress 5 million troops. In terms of numbers, the second princess's army would have more than double his army. While Song Xiaotian was deep in thought, many of the soldiers walked in. Shangxiang's why I asked Sun Shangxiang's army was with Shangxiang armies, Shangxiang army. When everyone heard Song Xiaotian's question, they all shook their heads and looked at Song Xiaotian in confusion. The Lord has ordered us to assist Marshal Sun to wipe out the enemies 4 million soldiers. Marshal Sun will leave the second princess's 5 million soldiers to us. Song Xiaotian looked at the crowd and said, "Is this true? That's great. I'm dying to see Marshal Sun's army kill the enemy and gain merits. This is an opportunity for us. I've been itching for it for a long time. Marshal, I want to be the vanguard." Everyone was excited when they heard Song Xiaotian's words. "Ha ha, you did not disappoint me. Now, I will assign tasks to all of you." Song Xiaotian could not help but laugh when he saw how excited everyone was. Then, Song Xiaotian assigned tasks to everyone. "Everyone, this is our first battle. Whether or not the Lord values us will depend on your performance." After assigning the tasks, Song Xiaotian looked at the crowd and said with a solemn expression, "Marshal, don't worry. We will do our best to kill the enemy. We'll definitely kill them all. We will complete the task." Everyone cupped their fists and said passionately, "Good. Go and get ready. Wait for the order to attack." "What's the situation?" Sun Shangxiang stood on top of a mountain and looked at the dense army in front of him. The densely packed army was naturally the first princess's 250 soldiers. If one looked carefully, they would see that there were also many soldiers around the 5 million soldiers, and those soldiers were slowly moving toward the 5 million soldiers. "Marshal, our men are surrounding the enemy. The enemy has not discovered us yet." A general quickly replied when he heard Sun Shangxiang's question. Sun Shangxiang looked at the sky, and after a while, he suddenly said, "Pass down the order. All troops attack." "Yes." Hearing Sun Shangxiang's words, many soldiers immediately moved quickly and left to pass down the order. "Marshal, it's about time. Why don't we attack?" A general in the first princess's camp said impatiently. After all, killing Sun Shangxiang's army was an opportunity to make a name for themselves. How could they not look forward to it? "Okay, pass down my order, attack." "What's going on?" Just as the marshal was about to give the order for the soldiers to attack, he was interrupted by the sudden battle cries. The marshal couldn't help but frown as he asked solemnly, "This? I don't know either." The general beside the marshal shook his head quickly and ordered the guard beside him, "Why aren't you going to check what's going on? Attack! Attack! Attack!" The battle cries of the heaven-shaking squad could be heard from all directions. As for the first princess's camp, the soldiers were obviously shocked by the sudden battle cry. For a moment, they were actually a little flustered and panicked. "Everyone stay calm." The marshal immediately shouted when he saw this. Reporting to the marshal, something bad has happened." A guard ran over in a panic and shouted in panic at the same time. "How can you be so flustered? What's going on?" The marshal looked at the guard and asked with a frown. There are people everywhere." The guard hurriedly replied. "Who are they?" The marshal continued to ask. "They seem to be Sun Shangxiang's troops." They are densely packed, and they are everywhere. What? How is that possible? Shouldn't Sun Shangxiang be dead? How could her people appear here? Chapter 9:57. Look carefully. If you continue to spout nonsense, I will take your head. The marshal's heart trembled when he heard the name Sun Shangxiang. At the same time, he looked at the guard and shouted. Hearing the marshal's words, the guard quickly said, "Marshal, what I said is true. The flag they are holding is indeed the flag with the word Sun. What do you all think?" Then, the marshal looked at the generals. "Marshal, it seems that Sun Shangxiang is very likely not dead." A general quickly replied, "How powerful is that Sun Shangxiang? Didn't the second princess say that she sent 2 10th Order Demon Emperors to kill Sun Shangxiang? Could it be that we have been fooled by the second princess? I think it is very possible. After all, no matter how strong Sun Shangxiang is, it is impossible for him to survive the attack of 2 demon emperors." The generals present suddenly discussed, and each of them had a face of panic and speculation. One had to know that not long ago, they had received news that the second princess had sent 2 10th Order Demon Emperors to kill Sun Shangxiang. When they heard this news, they were overjoyed. After all, it was impossible for them to be fearless, not to be afraid of the strong. Everyone had a natural fear of the strong from the bottom of their heart, and none of them were an exception. Therefore, they also followed the second princess's army, waiting for Sun Shangxiang to be killed, and the 2 million soldiers to be in chaos, so that they could encircle and annihilate Sun Shangxiang's army. But now, before they could encircle and annihilate Sun Shangxiang's army, they had already been surrounded by Sun Shangxiang's army unknowingly. Sun Shangxiang is not dead. Then what do you all say? What should we do now? The marshal was certain that Sun Shangxiang was not dead at this moment. After all, if Sun Shangxiang was dead, how could the Sun Shangxiang's army be so orderly and encircle them? Marshal, if Sun Shangxiang didn't die, none of us would be a match for Sun Shangxiang. Moreover, we don't have much more soldiers than them, but we definitely aren't a match for Sun Shangxiang Legion. That's right. The battle between our Sun Shangxiang army and the Sun Shangxiang army is like an egg smashing against a rock. Marshal, I think we should retreat quickly. This way, we can preserve our strength. Marshal, let's retreat quickly. Any later, and it might be too late. At this moment, no one had the confidence to go against Sun Shangxiang. One by one, they tried to dissuade him. As for the marshal himself, there was a look of struggle on his face. But if we flee before the battle, I'm afraid His Majesty will punish us, the marshal said with a worried expression. After all, as the marshal, he led the army to flee. If he angered the eldest princess, he would definitely lose his head. Marshal, you worry too much. We are preserving our strength for His Majesty. His Majesty will definitely not blame us. That's right. His Majesty will definitely understand the marshal's painstaking efforts. The marshal is doing this for His Majesty's sake. Seeing the hesitation on the marshal's face, everyone hurriedly tried to dissuade him. After all, if the marshal left, even if they were punished, they wouldn't be punished too severely because the marshal would be there to take care of it. However, if the marshal didn't leave and they fled, they wouldn't be able to escape death, even if they managed to escape. Marshal, don't hesitate anymore. Listen to the cries of killing around you. If you hesitate any longer, it will be too late. A general said hurriedly. The rest of the generals also looked at the marshal anxiously. Hearing the cries of killing around him and hearing the words of the generals, the marshal's heart was clearly wavering. All right, quickly prepare the troops and break out of the encirclement with me. The marshal finally made a decision and planned to retreat. Hearing the marshal's words, everyone was instantly delighted. Yes, Your Majesty. The marshal's face was dejected. This was probably the most aggrieved battle he had ever fought. After all, he was leading an army of 5 million soldiers, yet he had to flee in the first battle. If this matter were spread, it would definitely be a great humiliation. However, when it came to this, there was nothing he could do. Marshal, this is bad. The soldiers have been held back by the enemy and can't retreat at all. Marshal, we can't care about those people. If we care about them, we will all die here today. Marshal, please consider the big picture and ignore those soldiers for now. Just as the marshal was waiting for the soldiers to retreat together, he saw the generals running over with ugly expressions to report to him. Damn it! Could it be that Sun Shangxiang wants to bring 2 million soldiers to attack us? The marshal cursed angrily. He obviously hadn't expected that it would be so difficult to escape at this point. However, at this point, he could only consider the big picture. All of you, lead your troops and follow me to break out of the encirclement in the direction of Bright Moon Valley. Break out as many as you can. Although the marshal was afraid of Sun Shangxiang, it didn't mean that he was scared silly and didn't have his own thoughts. As early as when the generals went to organize the retreat, he had already studied the route of retreat. In his opinion, Bright Moon Valley was the best route of retreat. This was because Bright Moon Valley was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Moreover, it was relatively dangerous. In his opinion, since Sun Shangxiang had made such a move to encircle him, they must have mobilized all of their troops. In his opinion, Sun Shangxiang would never have thought that he would start to escape so quickly. Therefore, he thought that Bright Moon Valley was his only way out. When the time came, as long as he occupied Bright Moon Valley, he could attack and retreat at will. Yes, hearing the marshal's words, everyone immediately led a large number of troops and horses and followed behind the marshal, rushing in the direction of Bright Moon Valley. Of course, Sun Shangxiang had seen all of this. With such a general, the eldest princess still dares to establish a country. She's really useless. She actually used such a useless person. Sun Shangxiang smiled disdainfully. She also didn't expect that the eldest princess men would run away without a fight. If the eldest princess men fought with her troops desperately, they might be able to cause some damage to her troops and cause some trouble. But now, it seemed that she had thought too much. After all, no matter what war it was, there was nothing easier than chasing after a stray dog. How were the preparations in the direction of Bright Moon Valley? Sun Shangxiang immediately turned around and asked. That's right, the 400,000 troops that she had deployed at the beginning were in the direction of Bright Moon Valley. If the eldest princess men didn't escape in the direction of Bright Moon Valley, it would be fine. As long as they fled in that direction, they would die even faster. There was no doubt that they were walking into a trap. Don't worry, Marshal. The 400,000 troops have been waiting in the direction of Bright Moon Valley for a long time. They're just waiting for their prey. A general behind her immediately replied. Chapter 958. Marshal, the Bright Moon Valley is just ahead. A general said to the marshal. All right, let the brothers hurry. The marshal finally heaved a sigh of relief when he heard the general's words. At this moment, although most of the troops were entangled, the marshal still led nearly 167 million soldiers to escape. Now, he couldn't wait to reach the Bright Moon Valley. In his opinion, as long as he reached the Bright Moon Valley, he would be able to protect the 167 million soldiers. He turned back and looked at the chaotic army that only cared about escaping. He couldn't help but shake his head. This newly recruited miscellaneous army couldn't be compared to a regular army. This was because he saw many soldiers throw away the weapons in their hands in order to escape. There were even some who threw away their armor in order to increase their escape speed. He finally understood what it meant to throw away one's armor. Seeing this scene, he was exasperated. One had to know that on the battlefield, weapons and armor were the guarantee of one's life. These soldiers actually threw away their weapons and armor in order to escape. If they were caught by the enemy, they wouldn't be able to escape death. Wait a minute. The marshal looked at the Bright Moon Valley in front of him and suddenly said, Marshal, what's wrong? The Bright Moon Valley is right in front of us. Why did you stop? Marshal, what happened? Marshal, let's run quickly. Don't waste time. Otherwise, the enemy will catch up. Hearing the marshal's order, many generals urged in confusion. The marshal frowned and shouted in dissatisfaction, Quiet down. If anyone makes any more noise, don't blame me for being merciless. The marshal's dissatisfied gaze was filled with murderous intent as he scanned everyone. Everyone quickly lowered their heads obediently. After all, how could they dare to provoke the marshal when he was angry? This Bright Moon Valley is too quiet. Let a pair of spies go in and take a look, the marshal said warily as he looked at the Bright Moon Valley in front of him. There shouldn't be an ambush, right? A general frowned and said, "You go in and take a look." Unexpectedly, the marshal pointed at the general who spoke. "What? I?" The general was shocked and annoyed at himself for speaking out of turn. Seeing that the general was about to speak, the marshal grunted in dissatisfaction and looked at the general. Yes, seeing that the marshal was glaring at him, the general didn't dare to say another word and quickly agreed. Following which, the general led over 20 spies towards the Bright Moon Valley. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just as the general and the 20 or so spies were about to approach the Bright Moon Valley, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. In the next second, hundreds of arrows were shot out from the Bright Moon Valley. Not good. When the general saw this scene, he was shocked. Looking at the power contained in the arrow and the speed of the arrow, it was clear that it was shot by a Demon King-level martial artist. The general placed one of the spies in front of him as he turned around and fled quickly. Not good. Marshal, there really is an ambush in Bright Moon Valley, the general hurriedly said to the marshal. Can you see clearly how many people there are in Bright Moon Valley? The marshal's face was gloomy as he looked at the general and asked. The general's face was also ugly, but he still shook his head. I didn't see clearly. Send more people to check. Hearing the general's words, the marshal gave another order. After all, he didn't know how many people were lying in ambush in Bright Moon Valley. He also didn't dare to lead the army and rashly advance. This was because if there were too many troops lying in ambush in Bright Moon Valley, if he led the army and rashly, he would undoubtedly be walking into a trap. But now he had no way out. Moreover, he had to quickly pass through Bright Moon Valley. This was because if he delayed any longer, there might be pursuers behind him. At this moment, he was furious. He was depressed. How did Sun Shangxiang know that he would escape from Bright Moon Valley and even arrange an ambush in Bright Moon Valley? You are leading 1,000 people for me this time. You must find out how many people there are in Bright Moon Valley. The marshal continued to point at the general. It's still me. Hearing the marshal's words, the general felt bitter. After all, he didn't know how many people there were in Bright Moon Valley. This job of investigating was definitely a job with a slim chance of survival. At this moment, he couldn't help but regret speaking out of turn previously. If he hadn't spoken out of turn, things wouldn't have turned out this way. Looking at the generals around him who were laughing at him, he was even more furious. Clang! What? Are you going to disobey the military order? The marshal couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense and directly drew his weapon. One had to know that at this moment, he was also extremely anxious. After all, if the pursuers behind him caught up, he would be surrounded again. Yes, General. Although he was extremely unwilling, the general could only grit his teeth and accept the order. He didn't doubt that if he disobeyed the marshal's order, the marshal would definitely kill him. All of you follow me. The general pointed at a group of soldiers and said. Then, more than 1,000 soldiers followed behind the general and set off for Bright Moon Valley. Prepare to defend. Just as they were about to reach Bright Moon Valley, the general saw the corpses on the ground and couldn't help but feel a little fearful. Hearing the general's words, the soldiers obeyed and placed their shields in front of them. These shields were naturally not ordinary shields. The defense of each of them naturally couldn't be underestimated. Continue forward. Seeing that all the soldiers had taken out their shields, the general heaved a sigh of relief and continued to give orders. More than 1,000 soldiers carefully advanced towards Bright Moon Valley. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All of a sudden, a large number of arrows were shot at the 1,000-plus soldiers. Bang, bang, bang. A series of metal clashing sounds were heard. The shields blocked most of the arrows, but 200 to 300 soldiers still died. But this was enough to make the general happy. The general couldn't help but be delighted. Then he hurriedly ordered the remaining 600 to 700 soldiers. Quick, continue forward. Although he ordered the soldiers to continue forward, the general cleverly hid at the back. Seeing that the soldiers were getting closer and closer to Bright Moon Valley, his heart was in his throat, and he hurriedly followed. At this moment, even when the soldiers were in front of Bright Moon Valley, not a single arrow was shot. What's going on? Could it be that there are no more arrows? Seeing this scene, the general couldn't help but be suspicious. Then, he was delighted because if there were no more arrows, it meant that there weren't many soldiers lying in ambush in Bright Moon Valley. Chapter 959. Are we going in or not? When all the soldiers arrived in front of Bright Moon Valley, they all became nervous. None of them dared to continue forward and looked at the general with pleading eyes. After all, no one wanted to continue forward even though they knew there was danger. Continue forward. The general saw the pleading eyes of the crowd. He also knew that these soldiers did not want to enter Bright Moon Valley, but he did not want to enter Bright Moon Valley. However, he had to enter Bright Moon Valley because of the marshal's order. He had to find out how many soldiers were in Bright Moon Valley in the shortest time possible. Poochie, seeing that the soldiers were still hesitating, the general stabbed his sword into the chest of one of the soldiers who was leaning behind. He knew that he had to make an example out of them, so that these soldiers would listen to him obediently. This will be the outcome of anyone who hesitates and disobeys the order, the general said coldly. Seeing this scene, panic flashed across the eyes of the soldiers. However, there was nothing they could do. They could only brace themselves and continue forward. When all the soldiers stepped into the Bright Moon Valley, they were all stunned. They did not expect that there would be so many ambushing soldiers in Bright Moon Valley. Without even thinking, they turned to leave. Kill them. An order came from the Bright Moon Valley. Then they saw that a large portion of the ambushing soldiers in Bright Moon Valley suddenly separated and surrounded the 600 to 700 soldiers. Quick run. The 600 to 700 soldiers did not have the courage to resist at all. They turned to escape. However, how could the many ambushing soldiers in Bright Moon Valley give them a chance? In the blink of an eye, they surrounded the 600 to 700 soldiers. In a few breaths, the 600 to 700 soldiers were all dead. Prepare for battle. After wiping out 600 to 700 people, one of the Legion commanders ordered. Then, the 400,000 soldiers immediately began to prepare for battle. The 600 to 700 soldiers were all killed. Only the general, after taking one look at the Bright Moon Valley, immediately turned around and left. How is it? Seeing the general return alone, the marshal immediately asked, Marshal, things are not good. Bright Moon Valley is full of people. There are at least 300,000 to 400,000 soldiers. The general quickly said, What? 300,000 to 400,000? Why is there so much? Hearing the general's words, the marshal's expression changed. So many ambushers, what should we do? That's an ambush of 300,000 to 400,000 soldiers. How are we supposed to break through? Are you sure it's an ambush of 300,000 to 400,000 soldiers? Are you sure you're not mistaken? At this moment, all the generals had panicked looks on their faces as they spoke nervously. Kill. Just as the generals were panicking, the marshal was thinking about what to do. Suddenly, there was a loud battle cry coming from behind. Not good, Marshal. There are a large number of soldiers chasing after us. A scout hurriedly ran over and shouted in a panic. Damn it! Hearing the spy's words made the marshal even angrier. The thing he was most worried about had happened. Marshal, what should we do now? All the generals looked at the marshal nervously. The marshal, on the other hand, was even more upset. The Bright Moon Valley in front of them was already easy to defend and difficult to attack, not to mention that there were 300,000 to 400,000 soldiers lying in ambush. Even if he led the army of 7 million soldiers, he would not be able to break through the Bright Moon Valley in a short time. And now a large number of soldiers had caught up from behind. There were soldiers chasing from behind and soldiers blocking in front. This was simply another encirclement. Moreover, it was undoubtedly very difficult to advance or retreat at this moment. He was regretting it now. If he had known, he would not have acted smart and walked into the Bright Moon Valley. If he had not walked into the Bright Moon Valley, things would not have turned out this way. Forget it. Since things have come to this, we can only cut off all means of retreat. Pass down the order. Break into the Bright Moon Valley at all costs. Even if we have to break through, we must tear an opening for us. The marshal had no choice but to give the order. The generals did not hesitate at all. After all, they also knew that the situation was critical. Then the entire army immediately moved. Like a tide, they surged towards the Bright Moon Valley. This made the soldiers who had lost their equipment and weapons suffer. After all, they were barehanded. Going up was simply courting death. However, the marshal and the generals did not have the time to care about them. At this moment, they only wanted to break through the Bright Moon Valley before the enemy caught up. However, the entrance to the Bright Moon Valley was obviously limited. Only tens of thousands of people could enter at a time. It seemed like a large number. However, one had to think carefully. There were a total of 400,000 soldiers in the Bright Moon Valley. This time, only tens of thousands of soldiers could enter. How could it be enough for Sun Shangxiang's subordinates to kill? Moreover, the quality of these 400,000 soldiers was naturally not something that the first princess's soldiers could compare to. There were even many who did not have any weapons at all. They were completely destined to be slaughtered. Marshal, we can't go on like this. We can't break through at all. A general looked at the army that was blocking the entrance of the Bright Moon Valley and said anxiously. The marshal also had a worried look on his face. When he heard the shouts behind him getting closer and closer, he became even more anxious. The other generals also looked at the marshal anxiously, waiting for his attention. All of you follow me. Let's tear an opening first. The marshal thought for a moment. He now knew that if he wanted to rely on this group of soldiers to tear through the defense of the Bright Moon Valley, it would take an unknown amount of time. Therefore, he interrupted and personally went into battle. No matter what, he and the other generals were all demon supremacies. With their cultivation, it was naturally easy for them to attack the soldiers. Although this was a little embarrassing, there were still things more important than their lives. Therefore, he could only do this. He wanted to tear an opening for the army so that the army could break through the Bright Moon Valley. Yes, hearing the marshal's words, everyone knew that the marshal was forced into a corner, and they all agreed slowly. Follow me and attack. The marshal directly released his cultivation aura. Powerful martial arts power instantly spread out in all directions. The marshal took the lead and led the generals to charge towards the Bright Moon Valley. When the generals saw the marshal doing this, they all did the same. They released their martial arts power and followed the marshal to attack the Bright Moon Valley. Sensing the terrifying auras emitted by the marshal and the other generals, the soldiers sensibly made way for them. In an instant, the marshal led the generals and rushed to the Bright Moon Valley. Generals and commanders, follow my footsteps and kill. Looking at Sun Shangxiang's army, the marshal roared. Chapter 960. Who are you? Hearing the source of a voice, the marshal stopped abruptly. Looking at the person who spoke, she was dressed in silver armor, had long hair on her forehead, a delicate face, a bow on her back, and a soft sword on her waist. She looked valiant, but at this moment, she was looking at him playfully. Looking at the sudden appearance of this female general, the generals behind the marshal suddenly became nervous. Because as far as they knew, it seemed that under Yi Hao's command, Sun Shangxiang was the only female general. Although Sun Shangxiang did not emit the slightest aura at this moment, everyone was still nervously guessing Sun Shangxiang's identity. The dignified Marshal Zhang actually doesn't know the identity of this marshal. Sun Shangxiang looked at the marshal and couldn't help but laugh. This marshal? What? You are really Sun Shangxiang. Marshal Zhang couldn't help but exclaim directly. Looking at Sun Shangxiang, Marshal Zhang involuntarily took half a step back. She is Sun Shangxiang. Why is she here? If she is here, then aren't we dead? All the generals looked at Sun Shangxiang, and their faces suddenly turned pale, and they all looked at Sun Shangxiang in fear. Marshal Zhang, What do you think of the scenery of the Bright Moon Valley? Sun Shangxiang looked around the Bright Moon Valley and then asked Marshal Zhang with a smile. What do you mean? Hearing Sun Shangxiang's words, Marshal Zhang looked at Sun Shangxiang nervously. Marshal Zhang had never thought that one day he would be so nervous in front of a woman. One had to know that he had never been so nervous in front of the first princess. But he could not be nervous. After all, this was a woman that even 2 10th Order Demon Emperors couldn't kill. He was just a demon venerable. What was he? Since Marshal Zhang is in a hurry to enter the Bright Moon Valley, wouldn't it be better to be buried here in the future? Sun Shangxiang said with a smile. Hearing Sun Shangxiang's words, Marshal Zhang couldn't help but tremble. How could he not understand that Sun Shangxiang wanted to kill him? At this moment, Marshal Zhang's heart was filled with anxiety, like an ant on a hot pan. After all, he was no match for Sun Shangxiang. And now, it was even more impossible for him to escape. Because if he could escape from Sun Shangxiang, then Sun Shangxiang would really be nothing more than this. Can you let me go? Marshal Zhang gritted his teeth and finally opened his mouth dejectedly. Upon hearing Marshal Zhang's words, his subordinates were all shocked. Clearly, they had not expected Marshal Zhang to say such a thing. However, not a single one of them said anything. After all, they also wanted to live. Marshal Zhang, are you joking? Sun Shangxiang looked at Marshal Zhang with a smile. In his heart, he was already full of contempt for Marshal Zhang. At the same time, he didn't expect Marshal Zhang to be so spineless that he would beg for mercy and surrender so easily. Sun Shangxiang really couldn't understand how the first princess was assured to let such a person be the commander-in-chief of 5 million troops. With such a commander-in-chief, it would be difficult for the first princess's forces not to be destroyed. Sun Shangxiang couldn't help but think that if the first princess knew that Marshal Zhang was so spineless that he would beg for mercy, would she vomit blood in anger? Since Marshal Zhang had said this, he had completely thrown caution to the wind and no longer had any scruples. He said, as long as Marshal Sun spares my life, I am willing to lead all my soldiers to surrender. Hearing Marshal Zhang's words, Sun Shangxiang deliberately showed a difficult expression. Seeing Sun Shangxiang's appearance, Marshal Zhang's heart tightened, and at the same time, he was furious. He hadn't expected that Sun Shangxiang would actually look so reluctant when he had taken the initiative to surrender. Marshal Zhang's subordinates were all watching Sun Shangxiang nervously. Although surrendering was a disgrace to soldiers, they still wanted to live. After all, if the marshal had already acted this way, what else could they persevere for? Therefore, their lives were completely in Sun Shangxiang's hands at the moment. If Sun Shangxiang agreed to their surrender, they would have a chance to live. However, if Sun Shangxiang didn't even give them a chance to surrender, then they wouldn't even have a chance to live. All right, since you all want to surrender, I'm sorry. Sun Shangxiang suddenly moved and walked over to Marshal Zhang and the other generals. Marshal Zhang and the others had ugly expressions on their faces at the moment. Sun Shangxiang's actions just now had sealed their cultivation bases. In other words, apart from their strong physical defenses, they couldn't use any martial power at all. They were no different from ordinary people. Come on, take away the weapons of Marshal Zhang and the other generals. Upon hearing Sun Shangxiang's words, a group of soldiers immediately took away all the weapons of Marshal Zhang and the others. Marshal Zhang, what happens next depends on your performance. Make your people surrender obediently and stop making useless resistance. After sealing the cultivation bases of Marshal Zhang and the others, Sun Shangxiang used spiritual power and took away their weapons. Marshal Zhang was no longer in any danger at the moment, so Sun Shangxiang continued to speak. Yes, at the moment, Marshal Zhang was dejected, but there was no other way. In order to live, he could only agree to Sun Shangxiang. All soldiers, listen to my orders. Don't make any useless resistance. Put down your weapons and surrender. Marshal Zhang said. Upon hearing Marshal Zhang's words, the soldiers put down their weapons one after another. After all, these weren't regular soldiers. They were soldiers that the eldest princess had recruited not long ago. When they were surrounded, they were already scared out of their wits. If it weren't for the fear of being punished, they would have surrendered long ago. Now that they had finally received Marshal Zhang's order, the speed at which they threw down their weapons was indescribably fast. It was as if each of them was afraid that if they threw down their weapons, they would lose their lives. Looking at the soldiers who threw down their weapons one after another, Sun Shangxiang summoned a spy and said, "Go and report to the Lord that our army has captured a large number of enemy soldiers. Ask the Lord what to do." If these were only a small number of captives, Sun Shangxiang could deal with them herself. However, these were 1 or 2 million captives. She suddenly didn't know what to do. Therefore, Sun Shangxiang thought of leaving this problem to Yi Hao to deal with. In the end, it was completely up to Yi Hao to kill or keep them alive. "Yes, sir." Upon hearing Sun Shangxiang's order, the spy immediately turned and left. "Watch these captives for me. All of you, come with me." Looking at the captives who had surrendered, Sun Shangxiang's heart was still not at ease. At this moment, she began to worry about the situation on Song Xiaoyan's side. After all, the number of people on Song Xiaoyan's side was a little inferior to the enemy's. Chapter 961. Everyone attack. Song Xiaoyan ordered, and the entire army moved out instantly. Song Xiaoyan had already received news that Sun Shangxiang's army was chasing after Marshal Zhang's army. Song Xiaoyan had not launched an attack for so long. This was because he had expected that the second princess's army would definitely send troops to rescue the eldest princess's army when they found out that something had happened to them. Therefore, Song Xiaoyan had taken a risk and arranged for his 600,000 troops to ambush the second princess's army on the way to the eldest princess's army. Fortunately, as he had expected, the second princess's army had really done so. At this moment, the second princess's army had already entered his encirclement. However, his encirclement looked extremely strange. This was because the number of people they had surrounded was more than double the number of people they had surrounded. Therefore, it looked somewhat comical. However, Song Xiaoyan was not afraid at all. After all, this was a regular army. If this army, which had been recruited at 0 hours, couldn't even take on 2 or 3 people at once, it would be a waste of effort. The training these soldiers had received every day would be in vain. Song Xiaoyan's 600,000 troops also knew that they were outnumbered. However, they had been doing logistical work and accepting the cities that Sun Shangxiang's army had conquered. They had long been envious of other people's achievements on the battlefield. Now, the opportunity was right in front of them. This was an excellent opportunity for them to perform. How could they let it go to waste? Therefore, at this moment, the many soldiers were like tigers that had seen their prey and pounced towards the second princess's army. What's going on? The soldiers of the second princess's army were also stunned by the sudden appearance of the soldiers. "Pay attention to your defenses," Marshal Shi shouted hurriedly. However, most of the soldiers were new recruits. Many of them were scared silly by this scene. Therefore, there were very few people who would listen to Marshal Shi. In an instant, many of them had already started to panic before Song Xiaoyan's army could reach them. Many of them even started to trample on each other. Many of them even injured their own comrades by mistake. A bunch of trash. Stay calm for this, Marshal. Seeing the panicked appearance of all the soldiers, Marshal Shi angrily shouted, "Marshal, these people don't seem to be Sun Shangxiang's men." One of the generals looked at the incoming army and quickly said, "Look at their flags. They seem to be Song Xiaoyan's men. But why did that Song Xiaoyan suddenly attack me? Isn't that Song Xiaoyan specialized in taking over cities?" All the generals were discussing among themselves. Song Xiaoyan's men? According to the news, Song Xiaoyan only has a total of 1 million soldiers. Song Xiaoyan has taken over so many cities, which means that he doesn't have that many soldiers besieging us this time. Hearing the discussion of the generals, Marshal Shi's eyes lit up. "Quick, organize the soldiers to counterattack." Thinking of this, Marshal Shi heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly ordered. Yes. Hearing Marshal Sher's words, the generals slowly recovered from their panic. Under the command of the generals, Marshal Sher's army also slowly recovered from their panic. When Marshal Sher's soldiers realized that Song Xiaoyan's soldiers did not have as many soldiers as theirs, their fighting spirit gradually rose. Although Song Xiaoyan's soldiers attacked fiercely and moved quickly, Marshal Sher could not match up to them. However, they were no match for Marshal Sher's soldiers. For a moment, the two armies were in a stalemate. When Marshal Sher saw this, he let out a sigh of relief. This was because both sides were evenly matched. However, he had more soldiers on his side. As long as he persevered, Song Xiaoyan's soldiers would exhaust their energy faster than his. Therefore, in his opinion, as long as he persevered, victory would be his. However, Marshal Sher could not help but sigh in his heart. This was the difference between a regular army and soldiers recruited from scratch. Song Xiaoyan's 600,000 soldiers were actually evenly matched with his 1,500,000 soldiers. If the quality of his soldiers was the same as Song Xiaoyan's soldiers, he would definitely be able to eliminate Song Xiaotian in an instant. However, there was nothing he could do about it. After all, the second princess had just ascended to the throne. It was not easy for her to recruit so many soldiers in such a short period of time. On top of that, Yi Hao's army arrived so quickly that they did not even have a chance to train. Therefore, the quality of the 1,500,000 soldiers was not to be underestimated. Marshal, as long as we persevere, it won't take long for our advantage to be revealed. That's right. Although our quality is not as good as theirs when it comes to physical strength, how can one of them match up to 2 or 3 of us? As long as we destroy Song Xiaoyan's army, we will be famous. Moreover, as long as we go through this war, I believe the quality of our soldiers will increase by a lot. Marshal Sher's generals smiled when they saw that the soldiers on the battlefield were evenly matched with Song Xiaoyan's soldiers. When Marshal Sher heard the words of his generals, he was in a good mood, and a smile gradually appeared on his face. On the other hand, Song Xiaotian had a serious look on his face. The generals around Song Xiaotian looked at Song Xiaotian anxiously. Marshal, we can't go on like this. If this goes on, we will be at a disadvantage. Marshal, it's about time. Let the soldiers retreat. Many of the generals tried to persuade Song Xiaotian. When Song Xiaotian heard the general's words, he looked at the two armies fighting and frowned. This was because his soldiers had the upper hand against Marshal Sher's soldiers at the beginning. However, they were now evenly matched with Marshal Sher's soldiers. Moreover, Marshal Sher had a huge advantage in terms of numbers. Obviously, he had underestimated Marshal Sher's 1,500,000 soldiers. These 1,500,000 soldiers relied on their numbers to make up for their lack of strength. If this stalemate continued, Marshal Sher's men might be able to turn the tables. No, we have to hold on for a little longer, Song Xiaotian suddenly said. He thought of Sun Shangxiang. If he could hold Marshal Sher back for a little longer, he could buy more time for Sun Shangxiang. After all, if he retreated, he would be able to protect himself. However, if he allowed these 1,500,000 soldiers to join forces with Marshal Zhang's 2,500,000 soldiers, it would put a lot of pressure on Sun Shangxiang. Chapter 962. Kill. The generals heard Song Xiaoyan's determined tone and stopped trying to persuade him. They waved the weapons in their hands and attacked Marshal Sher's men. The battle lasted for more than 2 hours. The ground was littered with corpses and blood flowed like a river. However, on the battlefield, the battle cries were deafening. Although Marshal Sher's men had lost more men than Song Xiaoyan's men, they still had the upper hand. However, they did rely on their advantage in numbers to gradually gain the upper hand. If nothing went wrong, it wouldn't be long before Marshal Sher's men gained the upper hand. Song Xiaotian looked at the scene and frowned. He kept thinking of a countermeasure. Marshal, we can't go on like this. If this goes on, we will definitely suffer heavy losses. That's right, Marshal. The physical strength of our brothers is obviously declining. Marshal, We can still make it if we retreat now. The generals were all covered in blood. It was obvious that they had been through a lot of killing. They all spoke to Song Xiaotian. Hold on a little longer, Song Xiaotian said in a low voice. Marshal, I think the battle on Marshal Sun's side has ended. Why don't we send someone to check it out? If the battle on Marshal Sun's side has ended, we will lose more than we gain if we continue to hold on. The generals all suggested. All right, you go and check it out. Song Xiaotian agreed after hearing the general's suggestions. He then ordered one of the generals. Yes, Marshal. The general quickly turned and left after receiving Song Xiaotian's order. Haha, Marshal, if this goes on, we will have the upper hand. As long as we have the upper hand, Song Xiaotian's men will be at our mercy. This Song Xiaotian is really an idiot. He sent his 600,000 soldiers to their deaths for nothing. As long as we annihilate his 600,000 men, we will have made a great contribution. The generals around Grand Marshal Shi exclaimed excitedly. It was as if they had seen the hope of victory. All of them had smiles on their faces. Marshal Shi suddenly said, just in case, go and tell the soldiers to hold the enemy back. Don't let any of them go. Marshal Shi had also thought about it. If Song Xiaotian suddenly ordered the entire army to retreat, it would be troublesome. This was a military merit placed in front of him. How could he bear to let it go? Don't worry, Marshal. None of these bastards will escape today. Ha ha ha, said one of the generals confidently. Immediately after, the crowd burst into laughter. It could be seen that everyone's mood had become much better. Don't just stand there. Kill these bastards for me, Marshal Shi said to the generals. Hearing Grand Marshal Shi's words, all the generals charged out. When Marshal Shi saw this, the smile on his face widened. It was as if he could already see Song Xiaotian's men being wiped out. Then, Great General Shi quickly scanned the area and looked for Song Xiaotian's commander flag. Capture the ringleader first. Soon, Marshal Shi saw Song Xiaotian's flag. He raised his arm and shouted, "Follow me and kill the enemy commander." Yes. Hearing Marshal Shi's words, the generals under his command were all excited. Marshal, the enemy commander has brought his men over. Seeing Marshal Shi and his men moving quickly, one of the generals quickly reported to Song Xiaotian. Great. Do you think I'm afraid of him? Song Xiaotian snorted coldly. It was obvious that he was itching to fight. Follow me and fight. Song Xiaotian shouted to the generals under his command. Yes. Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, the generals under his command were ready for battle. Marshal Song, do you dare to fight with me? Marshal Shi looked at Song Xiaotian and asked loudly. Why would I dare? Song Xiaotian replied fearlessly. All right then, let me have a taste of your true strength. Grand Marshal Shi's aura burst out from his body as soon as he finished speaking. His 10th Order Archdevil Venerable Cultivation was fully revealed. Marshal Shi held a pair of giant hammers with both hands and unleashed a powerful force towards Song Xiaotian. Song Xiaotian reacted quickly. A purple spear appeared in his hand and shot out like a purple dragon towards Marshal Shi. Bang! In the next second, the two of them collided with each other, and both of them took a few steps back. However, in the next second, the two of them collided with each other again. He saw that the two marshals were already engaged in a battle. Naturally, the generals on both sides could not side with each other, and they started fighting with each other. At this moment, everyone was engaged in a fierce battle. Marshal Song, you're quite strong. Marshal Shi forced Song Xiaotian to retreat and said with a smile, You're not bad either. Song Xiaotian replied to Marshal Shi's words. I really want to be friends with you. Marshal Shi suddenly said, People who walk different paths cannot work together. Since we're on different sides, we're destined to be enemies. Song Xiaotian replied coldly after hearing Marshal Shi's words. Is that so? Marshal Shi's eyes suddenly flashed with a sinister light. Suddenly, a silver light appeared on Marshal Shi's sleeves. Swoosh, 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 Suddenly, a large number of silver needles flew out from Marshal Sher's sleeves just as Song Xiaotian charged towards him. The sharp silver needles shot towards Song Xiaotian in an overwhelming manner. "You're so cunning." Song Xiaotian frowned at the sight of the silver needles and quickly dodged to the side. However, Marshal Sher was not in a hurry at all. A smile appeared on his face, as if he had succeeded in his scheme. Marshal Sher's two giant hammers collided with each other. This inexplicable action puzzled many of the onlookers. Even Song Xiaotian was puzzled. However, he did not have the time to think about it, as he was desperately trying to dodge the silver needles. Phew! Song Xiaotian took a deep breath after dodging the silver needles with great difficulty. However, at this moment, there was some white powder in the air. Song Xiaotian did not react in time and inhaled a lot of it. Song Xiaotian quickly held his breath and looked at Marshal Sher. Marshal Sher laughed out loud. "Ha ha! You've been fooled." Marshal Sher's silver needles were only used to attract Song Xiaotian's attention. The white powder was Marshal Sher's real killer move. Two dark grooves appeared on both of Marshal Sher's giant hammers. Needless to say, the white powder came from these dark grooves. The reason why Marshal Sher did that strange action just now was to open the dark grooves. "You despicable!" Song Xiaotian wanted to attack, but he realized that the strength in his body was dissipating. Beads of sweat appeared on Song Xiaotian's forehead as he looked at Song Xiaotian furiously. Chapter 963. Now you can go and die. Marshal Sher looked at Song Xiaotian proudly. As long as he killed Song Xiaotian's army would be leaderless and chaos would ensue. That would be his chance to destroy Song Xiaotian's army. Hurry up and save the marshal. Song Xiaotian's subordinates shouted anxiously when they saw that Song Xiaotian had fallen into their trap. "Stop them for me," Marshal Sher ordered when he saw that Song Xiaotian's subordinates were about to charge at him. The generals under Marshal Sher's command quickly stopped Song Xiaotian's subordinates when they heard Marshal Sher's command. "You don't have to worry about me. Retreat with your army." Song Xiaotian knew that he was doomed. He could not use any martial arts power at the moment and was as good as a cripple. Now that he was in the hands of Marshal Sher, he was at the mercy of Marshal Sher. It did not matter if he died. What he was worried about was that if he died, it would affect the army. At that time, the three armies would definitely be defeated like a landslide. Thus, rather than doing that, it would be better to have those soldiers leave quickly. "You want to retreat? Don't even think about escaping today." Marshal Sher shouted coldly when he heard Song Xiaotian's words. "Is that so? How arrogant!" Just as Marshal Sher's voice fell, a woman's voice suddenly sounded. Hearing this voice, Song Xiaotian's eyes lit up. His heart was at ease, and a smile appeared on his face. Song Xiaotian's subordinates also heaved a sigh of relief. "Who is it?" Hearing this voice, Marshal Sher frowned and looked at the person who had come. Sun Shangxiang moved quickly to Song Xiaotian's side and looked at him with concern. "Marshal Song, are you all right?" "Thank you for your concern, Marshal Sunday." "I am fine," Song Xiaotian said slowly. "Thank you for your hard work. Leave the rest to me." Sun Shangxiang was relieved when she saw that Song Xiaotian was fine. "Marshal Sun? You are Sun Shangxiang?" Marshal Sher's expression changed when he heard Song Xiaotian address Sun Shangxiang. He could not help but take half a step back. "What? She is Sun Shangxiang? Is this for real?" Since the marshal said so, it seems to be true. Then what should we do? Naturally, the generals under Marshal Sher's command had all heard of Sun Shangxiang's name. When they heard Sun Shangxiang's name and looked at Sun Shangxiang, they all took a few steps back in fear. Their eyes were filled with shock and fear. "That's me. Do you have any objections?" Sun Shangxiang looked at Marshal Sher. "It's really you." Although he had guessed Sun Shangxiang's identity, he was still shocked when he heard Sun Shangxiang admit it. "Men, kill her for me." Who would have thought that Marshal Sher would suddenly shout out loud? Marshal Sher knew that he was no match for Sun Shangxiang. If he were to fight with Sun Shangxiang, he would definitely die. Therefore, if he wanted to live, he had to stay away from Sun Shangxiang. He could only do this, using the soldiers to consume Sun Shangxiang's strength, at the same time using the lives of the soldiers to save his own life. Kill. When a group of soldiers heard Marshal Shi's words, they all surrounded Sun Shangxiang and attacked her. How despicable! Seeing that Marshal Shi had sacrificed soldiers to protect himself, Song Xiaotian looked down on Marshal Shi. After all, to block Sun Shangxiang, how many soldiers would it take to kill Sun Shangxiang? However, Marshal Shi looked indifferent and even had a smug look on his face. Men, stop this group of trash. Don't let them get close to Marshal Sunday. Song Xiaotian was worried that these soldiers would dirty Sun Shangxiang's hands, so he spoke directly. It's fine. Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, Sun Shangxiang waved his hand. A group of trash who don't know what's good for them. If they want to die, this marshal will fulfill their wish. Sun Shangxiang said disdainfully. Sun Shangxiang's aura was like a rainbow as spiritual energy constantly burst out. Die! Looking at the soldiers charging at him, Sun Shangxiang's flexible sword was surrounded by spiritual energy. Kill! Although Sun Shangxiang used spiritual energy, many soldiers relied on their numbers and were not afraid of Sun Shangxiang at all. They surrounded Sun Shangxiang, but in the next second, they were completely dumbfounded. This was because they discovered that the power they used was completely defeated in front of Sun Shangxiang. Moreover, Sun Shangxiang's sword energy was constantly tearing their bodies apart. In just a breath, dozens of people died. Those dozens of people simply did not understand what was going on and lost consciousness. This scene completely scared many people silly. Those soldiers who were slightly behind all had shocked expressions on their faces at this moment and retreated backwards. That's spiritual energy. Marshal Shi was very knowledgeable. Although he had not seen spiritual energy before, he could recognize it based on the description. Thinking of this, Marshal Shi understood why 2 10th Order Demon Emperors were no match for Sun Shangxiang, and why Sun Shangxiang could still come back alive. What a joke! The difference between a spiritual cultivator and a demon emperor was like heaven and earth. 2 10th Order Demon Emperors died in the hands of a spiritual cultivator like Sun Shangxiang. In the next second, the expression on Marshal Shi's face turned into one of utter defeat. After all, even 10th Order Demon Emperors were no match for Sun Shangxiang. How could he, a 10th Order Demon Venerable, be a match for Sun Shangxiang? All of you go. Hurry up and attack. After knowing Sun Shangxiang's strength, Marshal Shi was even more afraid. He immediately shouted at the soldiers in a panic. When the soldiers saw Sun Shangxiang's strength, they were filled with fear towards Sun Shangxiang. Kill! However, the soldiers had no other choice. When they heard Marshal Shi's order, they could only grit their teeth and charge towards Sun Shangxiang. You're still as reckless as ever. Seeing so many soldiers charging towards him, Sun Shangxiang couldn't help but shake his head. He attacked the soldiers again. With Sun Shangxiang's strength, killing these soldiers was naturally as easy as killing ants. The soldiers who were killed fell in droves. In front of Sun Shangxiang, they did not have the strength to fight back at all. They were simply courting death. He's really strong. Even Song Xiaotian couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he saw Sun Shangxiang's strength. The way he looked at Sun Shangxiang was filled with respect and admiration. Obviously, Song Xiaotian also hoped that he could have Sun Shangxiang's strength. Not good. We can't stay here for long. Marshal Shi was shocked when he saw this scene. A trace of panic flashed through his eyes. Without any hesitation, Marshal Shi turned around and tried to escape. Marshal Shi is trying to escape. Stop him. Song Xiaotian saw Marshal Shi's actions and hurriedly shouted. Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, the soldiers under his command moved to stop Marshal Shi. Chapter 964. You want to escape? Can you? Looking at Marshal Shi's fleeing back, Sun Shangxiang fiercely slashed out with her sword. The powerful slash tore a hole in the air. Sun Shangxiang's figure moved quickly towards Marshal Shi. Quick, stop her! Behind him, Sun Shangxiang was chasing after him at high speed. Marshal Shi became even more flustered as he hurriedly shouted. However, it was too late. His speed was only at the peak of the Demon Lord level. How could he compare to Sun Shangxiang, who was at the first level of the Atman body realm? In the blink of an eye, Sun Shangxiang was in front of Marshal Shi. I'm going to kill you. Marshal Shi looked at Sun Shangxiang in front of him and roared. He used all his strength to attack Sun Shangxiang. Oomph. Sun Shangxiang snorted and slashed out with his sword. Crack! A crisp sound was heard. Marshal Shi's two giant hammers were cut in half by Sun Shangxiang as if they were thin paper. Marshal Shi turned pale with fright. He finally understood the difference between him and Sun Shangxiang. He didn't even have the right to fight with his life on the line. Marshal Shi's face turned pale. He wanted to run away, but the fear in his heart made it impossible for him to move his legs. She's too strong. How'd she do it? To think that Marshal Shi's weapon was broken so easily. This woman's strength is indeed terrifying. She is indeed the person that the Lord thinks highly of. Her strength is indeed impressive. It's over, it's over. How are we going to fight her if she's so strong? He dared to use a hidden weapon on Marshal Song just now. Let's see what he can do now. When the generals from both sides saw that Sun Shangxiang had broken Great General Shi's weapons so easily, they were all shocked and started discussing amongst themselves. Die. Sun Shangxiang looked at Marshal Shi and said softly. No. Marshal Shi screamed in despair when he heard Sun Shangxiang's words. However, his shout did not stop Sun Shangxiang's flexible sword from piercing his throat. Marshal Shi's eyes widened as he clutched his throat unwillingly. However, he was unable to suppress the blood gushing out of his throat. Plop! In the next second, Marshal Shi's body fell to the ground. Kill him. After killing Marshal Shi, Sun Shangxiang roared. Kill! Sun Shangxiang's words ignited the emotions of all the Song Xiaotian army soldiers. Their fighting spirit boiled as they charged towards the soldiers of General Shi's army. On the other hand, the people of Marshal Shi's army panicked when they saw that Marshal Shi was killed. It's over. It's over. The Marshal is dead. Brothers, run. The Marshal has been killed. The Marshal is dead. We're finished. The soldiers of Marshal Shi's army shouted in panic. Panic immediately spread through Marshal Shi's army like a plague. The emotions of countless soldiers fell to the bottom as they began to flee in panic. This caused Marshal Shi's army to lose the advantage that they had slowly gained at the beginning. When the soldiers of the Song Xiaotian army saw this, how could they not kill the drowning dogs? Marshal Shi's death instantly caused his army of more than 1,000,000 to crumble into pieces. The generals began to protect themselves out of fear of Sun Shangxiang. They wished that they would not attract Sun Shangxiang's attention. None of them dared to care about the lives of their soldiers. Kill! Didn't these bastards rely on their numbers? Why aren't they so arrogant now? If you're so capable, show us how arrogant you are now. Haha, this killing is so satisfying. The soldiers of the Song Xiaotian army had just fallen into a disadvantageous position and were holding their breaths. At this moment, they were fighting excitedly as they shouted excitedly to release the anger in their hearts. Kill! Just as Marshal Shi's soldiers began to flee, a large number of soldiers surged in from all directions. These soldiers were carrying the flag with the word Sun on it. These soldiers were naturally brought by Sun Shangxiang. There were 400,000 to 500,000 soldiers. With the addition of these 400,000 to 500,000 soldiers, the war had turned into an overwhelming massacre. The soldiers of Marshal Shi's army were now even more powerless to fight. Thank you, Marshal Sun. At this moment, Song Xiaotian thanked Sun Shangxiang from the bottom of her heart. Sun Shangxiang bent down and took Marshal Shi's space ring. After a while, he took out an elixir. Marshal Song, you're welcome. Sun Shangxiang handed the elixir to Song Xiaotian. Actually, Sun Shangxiang's purpose was to let Song Xiaotian hold back Marshal Shi's army. Only in this way could she wholeheartedly deal with Marshal Zhang's army. To be honest, when she saw that Marshal Shi's army was working so hard to hold back Marshal Shi's army, she felt a little grateful. Song Xiaotian took the elixir and quickly swallowed it. Then, the strange feeling in her body gradually disappeared. Martial Sun, have you dealt with your side? Song Xiaotian asked Sun Shangxiang with a sigh of relief, when she felt that the strength in her body was recovering. Sun Shangxiang nodded. I've killed a portion of the 2.5 million soldiers. The rest have surrendered. This, Song Xiaotian and his subordinates could not help but gasp when they heard Sun Shangxiang's words. Although Sun Shangxiang had a lot of men under his command, Sun Shangxiang had been able to deal with 2.5 million soldiers in such a short period of time. This really shocked Song Xiaotian. He could not help but sigh. No wonder he was Yi Hao's subordinate. This was because he also knew that Sun Shangxiang was Yi Hao's original subordinate. He was not like them who had joined him halfway. I'm impressed. Song Xiaotian looked at Sun Shangxiang and said sincerely, Can you stop killing me? I want to surrender. I'm not a soldier. They're the ones who are fighting me. Can you let me go? I have parents and children to take care of. Please spare me. We don't want to be rebels. At this moment, the battlefield was filled with people begging for mercy. The begging became louder and louder. Many of Marshal Shi's soldiers threw down their weapons and knelt on the ground. This, Song Xiaotian could not help but look at Sun Shangxiang. Most of these people are citizens of the Tianyuan kingdom. Many of them were coerced. They are pitiful people. Marshal Song, please take them captive first. I've already sent someone to report this to the Lord. I believe that the Lord will make the decision, Sun Shangxiang said when he saw Song Xiaotian's questioning gaze. Song Xiaotian nodded when he heard Sun Shangxiang's words. After all, he was also a citizen of the Tianyuan kingdom. When he heard these people begging for mercy, his heart softened. He immediately said, Listen to the rebels. Those who surrender now can be spared. Chapter 965. The general sent by his son Shangxiang knelt in front of Yi Hao and said respectfully, My lord, I have something to report. Sun Shangxiang asked you to come back because of the captives. Yi Hao glanced at the general and said from his chair. The general was surprised when he heard Yi Hao's words. After all, Sun Shangxiang had just captured those soldiers, and he had rushed over as fast as he could. He didn't understand how Yi Hao knew about this. How did you know? The general was shocked, but still asked curiously. Seeing the general's expression, Yi Hao knew that he had guessed correctly. Yi Hao couldn't say that he guessed. You don't need to know. Yes, your subordinate spoke out of turn. Please forgive me, my lord. The general's heart froze, and he hurriedly said, afraid that he would anger Yi Hao. Actually, it wasn't difficult for Yi Hao to guess. After all, Yi Hao knew that Marshal Zhang's army was no match for Sun Shangxiang's army. They couldn't even defeat Sun Shangxiang. Yi Hao didn't believe that these new recruits would have the spirit to sacrifice their lives for the country and risk their lives for the first princess. Therefore, there would be a large number of soldiers surrendering. For Sun Shangxiang to send people back at this time, it was naturally because of this matter. Although Yi Hao was just guessing, the general didn't know. He thought that Yi Hao had some tricks up his sleeve and knew his goal. He couldn't help but be shocked. He was full of admiration for Yi Hao, and the respect in his eyes deepened. Tell Sun Shangxiang to keep the captives who are suitable to be soldiers and those who are willing to be soldiers. Those who aren't should go back to where they came from. Give them some money for their journey home. Yi Hao had already thought about the arrangements for these captives long ago. Thus, he directly spoke to them. After all, these captives were all citizens of the Tianyuan kingdom and hadn't done anything bad. They probably joined the army because they were threatened and forced by the eldest princess. Moreover, there were so many captives that it was impossible to kill them all. As for the solution he came up with, it was naturally the best of both worlds. This way, he could directly deal with these captives and increase the number of his soldiers. But Yi Hao was not like the eldest and second princesses, who accepted all kinds of people. Most importantly, it would depend on whether or not those soldiers were willing to join the army. If one did not join the army willingly, there was no point in staying in the army. If that was the case, he might as well let them go home. This humble one will go back and report to Marshal Sun. Hearing Yi Hao's order, The general hurriedly replied respectfully. By the way, tell Sun Shangxiang to attack Tianyuan Kingdom directly after we're done with the captives. Don't stop there. Before the general left, Yi Hao continued. Yi Hao didn't want to waste any time, nor did he want to give the eldest princess any time to react. He didn't want the eldest princess to cause trouble again. Now that the second princess had joined forces with the Black Sword sect, he would definitely be affected. Therefore, Yi Hao had not been idle these days. Instead, he had been thinking about how to deal with the Black Sword sect, because according to his investigation, the Black Sword sect was very strong. After all, they had spiritualists. And if it was a low-level spiritualist, Yi Hao could still deal with it. But if it was a high-level spiritualist, to be honest, Yi Hao was not confident. After all, he only had 5 spiritualists under his command. They were Sun Shangxiang, Guan Yu, Zhao Yun, Ran Min, and Huang Zhong. And the key was that the strength of these 5 people were all at the first level of the Atman body realm. Although with their talent, they could fight against those of a higher level without a problem. But if the opponent was too strong, it was obvious that these people were not enough. Yi Hao could only hope that if he ascended to the throne in the ancient demon realm, the system would give him some rewards. If the system gave him some rewards, he might be able to solve the problem in front of him. But he couldn't completely place all his hopes on this. Looks like I'll have to hunt down some experts or magical beasts to get some good stuff, Yi Hao thought to himself. But at this moment, he couldn't leave the 3 armies in charge for the time being. Looks like I have to return to the Tianyuan Kingdom first. Yi Hao had already set a goal for himself. First, he would return to the Tianyuan Kingdom, take back the Tianyuan Imperial City, and then ascend to the throne. Then, he would increase his strength and destroy the second princess's forces and the Black Sword sect. Then, he would look for a way to deal with the Earth Fiend Black Chi. After all, so much time had passed. If he didn't look for a way to deal with the Earth Fiend Black Chi, Yi Hao was worried that the Purple Sky Divine Emperor might have a problem. And a reason why he hadn't looked for it for so long was not because he had forgotten about this matter. It was because his strength had never been enough. After all, although Yi Hao didn't know much about the Black Fiend sect, the recently gathered information told him that the Black Fiend sect strength was not weaker than the Black Sword sect. Moreover, Yi Hao discovered that the Black Sword sect seemed to have a trace of connection with the Black Fiend sect. It seemed that the Black Sword sect was a subsidiary force of the Black Fiend sect. Although this was not confirmed, Yi Hao felt that it should be possible. However, given his current strength, he still couldn't deal with the Black Fiend sect. After all, he had to be careful if he wanted to deal with the Black Sword sect. He might not even be a match for them. Moreover, the Black Fiend sect was even more powerful than the Black Sword sect. Therefore, finding a way to deal with the Earth Fiend Black Chi wasn't something that could be done in a hurry. He still had to do it step by step. The general who had returned from Yi Hao's side immediately bowed respectfully when he saw Sun Shangxiang and Song Xiaotian. Greetings, Marshal Song. Sun Shangxiang nodded and said, Rise. What did the Lord say? The Lord said that we can choose some captives who are suitable to be soldiers and integrate them into our troops. Of course, those who are unwilling to join the army will be released and given some travel expenses, the general quickly said. I didn't expect the Lord to be so benevolent. He actually let these rebels go. Song Xiaotian immediately heaved a sigh of relief when he heard the general's words. He was still worried that Yi Hao would be too cruel and merciless. He would really not let these captives go and would kill them quickly. However, he never expected that Yi Hao would actually give these captives 2 choices. Marshal Zhou, you heard it too. I should go and deal with the captives first. You can deal with your captives first. I'll take my leave now. Sun Shangxiang said to Song Xiaotian after he finished listening to the general's report and turned to leave. I won't be seeing you off, Marshal Sunday. Take care. Song Xiaotian didn't stop Sun Shangxiang from leaving. After all, Sun Shangxiang's side had captured far more captives than his side. Sun Shangxiang nodded and turned to leave. The soldiers under Sun Shangxiang's command immediately followed him. Chapter 966. Yes, Your Majesty. Hearing Sun Shangxiang's words, the generals immediately agreed. Sun Shangxiang also knew that if Song Xiaotian were to rely on his own army to subdue these 1 million captives, it would be a lot more troublesome. That was why she temporarily lent the soldiers she brought with her to Song Xiaotian. "Thank you, Marshal Sun." Song Xiaotian didn't refuse and directly said. This was because he knew his own strength. If he were to rely on his own people to subdue these 1 million captives, it would obviously be extremely difficult. Therefore, he didn't refuse. After Sun Shangxiang left, Song Xiaotian looked at the captives and shouted, "Rebel army, my lord is virtuous and will spare your lives. Why don't you kneel down and thank him? We thank you for your kindness. Thank you for sparing our lives." All the captives immediately knelt down and shouted. Every one of them had a look of gratitude on their faces. This was obviously a rebellion. Rebellion was a serious crime that was punishable by death. It could even result in 9 familial exterminations. Now that Yi Hao had actually spared them, how could they not be agitated? Many of them were so agitated that they started crying bitterly. "You are also citizens of the Tianyuan kingdom. Why don't you serve the kingdom and make meritorious contributions to bring honor to your ancestors instead of becoming a rebel army? Aren't you afraid of bringing shame to your ancestors?" Song Xiaotian looked at the captives and shouted coldly. Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, countless people lowered their heads in shame. "My lord is the 3rd prince consort of the Tianyuan kingdom and is highly regarded by his majesty. Not long ago, he led an army to destroy the Duan kingdom. Now is the time for the Tianyuan kingdom to rise and soar." Song Xiaotian continued. "What? The 3rd prince consort destroyed the Duan kingdom? The Duan kingdom is so powerful. How could the 3rd prince consort destroy the Tianyuan kingdom? Is this true? If it's true, then the prince consort is too terrifying." All the captives raised their heads in shock and looked at Song Xiaotian in disbelief. One had to know that the captives present were all citizens of the Tianyuan kingdom. They naturally knew how powerful the Duan kingdom was. This was because the Tianyuan kingdom had always been bullied by the Duan kingdom. Every time the Tianyuan kingdom was bullied by the Duan kingdom, the ones who suffered the most were naturally their citizens. However, when they heard that the mighty broken kingdom had actually been annihilated by Yi Hao, their first reaction was naturally shock. After the initial shock, everyone was a little skeptical. "Why would I lie to you?" Song Xiaotian could not help but ask with a smile when he saw everyone's suspicious eyes. Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, everyone started to believe Song Xiaotian's words. Some of them even looked excited. "Ha! God bless my Tianyuan kingdom. My Tianyuan kingdom is going to rise again. The 3rd prince consort is really too powerful. He can actually destroy the broken kingdom. I want to follow such a lord. I also want to follow such a lord. I really didn't expect that we would be deceived by the 2nd princess and become rebels. That's right. The 2nd princess actually spread rumors that His Majesty had died in battle and that she had inherited the throne by imperial decree. Preposterous. We've all been deceived. Fortunately, 3rd prince consort is here. Otherwise, we would still be in the dark." When the countless captives thought about how they had been deceived by the 2nd princess, they all spoke out angrily. Seeing this, Song Xiaotian spoke again. "All of you be quiet." Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, everyone immediately quieted down and looked at Song Xiaotian in silence. "As an 8-foot man, I will definitely be an indomitable spirit, serve the country, and achieve great things. I will bring honor to my ancestors." Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, countless captives felt their blood boiling as they looked at Song Xiaotian with burning eyes. Obviously, they were influenced by Song Xiaotian's words. "Marshal, please don't say anymore. We are all criminals. Do we still have a chance to serve the country?" "That's right. If we want to serve the country, will 3rd prince consort accept us?" "We are all rebels." Many of them heard Song Xiaotian's words and their eyes dimmed. After all, although Yi Hao had forgiven them, many of them were still unwilling to be labeled as rebels and traitors. Song Xiaotian obviously grasped the hearts of these captives. "Do you all want to be labeled as rebels and live the rest of your lives as cowards? Aren't you afraid that others will point fingers at you? Now, the Lord is giving all of you a chance. As long as you join the army, you can serve the country and the past will be forgotten. You will enjoy the same treatment as the current army. Song Xiaotian's gaze swept across the captives as his voice boomed in everyone's ears. Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, countless of them lifted their heads and looked at Song Xiaotian excitedly. Is what the marshal said true? Will Third Prince Consort really let bygones be bygones and give us this chance? This is great. I am willing to join the army. Countless captives shouted excitedly at this moment. Seeing that everyone's emotions have been stirred up, Song Xiaotian heaved a sigh of relief and nodded in satisfaction. Of course, there are conditions for the soldiers that the Lord wants. If they do not meet the conditions, the Lord will not accept them. Moreover, if they do not wish to become soldiers, the Lord will not force them. At this moment, Song Xiaotian spoke again. Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, many of the captives looked as if they had expected this. Of course, many of them heaved a sigh of relief too. After all, not everyone was willing to go to the battlefield and fight for their lives. Most of them preferred to live a peaceful and stable life. They were afraid that Yi Hao would be like the second princess and force them to join the army. All right, everyone. Those who wish to become pillars of the country, please sign up here. For those who are not selected, the Lord will give you some travel expenses and allow you to return home. Marshal, what about those who do not wish to join the army? Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, one of the captives looked at Song Xiaotian nervously and asked, "Don't worry. The Lord treats everyone equally. For those who do not wish to join the army, the Lord will still give you travel expenses and allow you to return home," Song Xiaotian said with a smile when he saw how nervous the captives were. Third Prince Consort is such a good person. Is the Third Prince Consort a savior who has descended to save us? If the Third Prince Consort becomes the king of Tianyuan Kingdom, I will definitely be loyal to him. This is great. I thought that we would be punished if we did not join the army. I did not expect the Third Prince Consort to give us travel expenses. It looks like the Third Prince Consort really treats us as his own people. I will be grateful to the Third Prince Consort for the rest of my life. Countless captives kowtowed to express their gratitude. Chapter 9:67. After all, they were on the battlefield, and all of them had to leave their homes. If you had to not care about them, they would definitely become refugees or even starve to death on the way home. They did not expect that Yi Hao would not punish them and would even give them travel expenses so that they could go home. This made Yi Hao's image in these people's hearts instantly. This was how people at the bottom of society were. They would be grateful to whoever treated them well. Obviously, all the captives were extremely grateful to Yi Hao. Although all the soldiers had surrendered, there were too many people. However, there were too many of them. Just dealing with these captives alone took more than 10 days. In these 10 days, the news of her army being defeated and surrendering reached the ears of the eldest and second princesses. At this moment, the eldest princess's court was in a state of desolation. The ministers who had been fawning over the eldest princess lowered their heads absent-mindedly. Many of them even claimed that they were sick and did not attend the morning court. Some of them even claimed that they were old and wanted to return home. The eldest princess was not stupid and naturally knew what was going on. It was obvious that the ministers were intimidated by Yi Hao and had fled the scene in order to save their own lives. This made the eldest princess angry and helpless. Now, with 4 million soldiers under her command, she did not have much confidence to go against Yi Hao. Now, more than half of the 4 million soldiers have been lost, and there were only slightly more than 1 million soldiers left. How was she going to fight against Yi Hao? Left Prime Minister, tell me, what should I do now? The eldest princess looked at the left Prime Minister with a cold face. Obviously, she had placed all her hopes on the left Prime Minister. This was because she knew that the left Prime Minister was loyal to her, and it was all thanks to the left Prime Minister that she was able to ascend the throne. If it were not for the left Prime Minister, she would probably still be imprisoned. Therefore, at this critical moment, she could only ask the left prime minister for help. The left prime minister paused when he heard the eldest princess's words. At this moment, the left prime minister looked extremely haggard and was no longer as high-spirited as he used to be. Obviously, he did not expect Yi Hao to be so powerful. He was so powerful that it was beyond his expectations. From the very beginning, he had already made up his mind. Even if the first princess was unable to unify the Tianyuan kingdom, he would still be able to do so. Even if there was Yi Hao and the second princess, at most, it would be a stalemate. This was already the worst-case scenario in his plan. But evidently, he had underestimated Yi Hao. To think that Yi Hao's army would be this strong, it was like a hot knife through butter. One had to know that the first and second princesses had sent out a total of 4 million soldiers. How long had it been since Yi Hao destroyed it? These 4 million soldiers were like pebbles sinking into the ocean. They didn't even cause the slightest splash. What were you hesitating for? Noticing the hesitation on the left prime minister's face, the eldest princess asked curiously with a frown. Hearing the first princess's question, all the officials looked at the left prime minister. After all, this matter was of great importance and concerned their lives. They were naturally curious and worried about what the first princess would do. But now, it was obvious that the first princess was seeking the left prime minister's opinion. The left prime minister was highly respected among them. Therefore, many of them wanted to see what the left prime minister would do. I dare not say, "Please forgive me, Your Majesty." Unexpectedly, the left prime minister fell to his knees before he could say anything. "What are you saying, Prime Minister? Why don't you tell us what you've done wrong?" The first princess was even more curious when she saw the left prime minister's reaction. "Your Majesty, Yi Hao is coming at us aggressively. Based on the route of their attack, it's not hard to tell that their target is Tianyuan Royal City," the left prime minister said to the first princess. The first princess nodded. Although she looked anxious, she signaled for the left prime minister to continue. "Your Majesty, Yi Hao's army is too strong. We are definitely no match for them. Therefore, I suggest that we avoid them." The left prime minister paused and looked at the first princess. "Avoid them." The first princess frowned when she heard the left prime minister's words. "Prime Minister, how do you suggest we avoid them?" "I suggest that we withdraw from Tianyuan Royal City and leave it to Yi Hao while we look for a new territory." Who knew that the left prime minister's words would cause an uproar in the court? What did the prime minister say? Give up Tianyuan Royal City? Could the prime minister have scared Yi Hao out of his wits? Has he forgotten how difficult it was for us to obtain Tianyuan Royal City? This is the royal city. If we give it up, where should we go? Furthermore, if we give up the royal city, Your Majesty's reputation will be tarnished and the morale of the troops will plummet. At this moment, all the ministers present expressed their opinions. It was obvious that the royal city was very important to them. They were very unwilling to give it up. If even these ministers were unwilling, the first princess was even more so. After all, she had conquered the royal city and ascended to the throne. How could she be willing to give it up? "Prime Minister, is this your suggestion?" The first princess frowned as she looked at the left prime minister. She was clearly unhappy with his suggestion. The left prime minister could see through the thoughts of the first princess and the ministers with a single glance. The left prime minister swept his gaze across everyone in the court. "Since none of you want to give up Tianyuan Royal City, let me ask you this. Who can stop Yi Hao's army?" Hearing the left prime minister's words, no one dared to look him in the eye and lower their heads. What a joke. All of them had heard that the second princess had gotten 2 10th Order Demon Emperors from some unknown place to deal with Yi Hao. Both of them had gone to deal with him, but none of them had returned. Furthermore, they were not even Demon Emperors. Who would dare to say that they could stop Yi Hao's army? What's wrong? No one dares to speak? The left prime minister snorted when he saw that no one dared to look him in the eye. The left prime minister believed that he had the ability to suppress these ministers. Indeed, when they heard the left prime minister snort, many of them lowered their heads in fear. "Your Majesty, as long as we are alive, there will be hope. We will only have a chance to make a comeback if we are alive. If we leave now, we will still have a chance to leave. If Yihao's army really encircles Tianyuan Royal City, we won't even be able to leave. The left prime minister retracted his gaze and looked at the first princess as he tried to persuade her. Chapter 968. The left prime minister had many confidence in the imperial court. When they heard what the left prime minister said, they all chimed in. Your Majesty, the prime minister is very thoughtful. Your Majesty, everything the prime minister has done is for your Majesty's sake. Your Majesty, why don't we listen to the prime minister's suggestion and abandon Tianyuan Royal City first? Most of the ministers present knelt on the ground and bowed respectfully. When the eldest princess saw the minister's reaction, she was a little shaken. After all, she was not a pedantic person. When she heard what the left prime minister said, she naturally understood the importance of it. The eldest princess looked at the left prime minister and said, since the prime minister wants to retreat, where should we retreat to? Your Majesty, please give me a brush, ink, paper, and an inkstone. The left prime minister did not say it out loud. Instead, he asked the eldest princess for instructions. After all, the eldest princess only had so many men left. They could not afford to lose any more men. Therefore, he had to be very careful and fortify himself at every step. There were many ministers in the imperial court. He could not guarantee that no one would betray them. Therefore, he had to keep their retreat a secret for the time being. Otherwise, Yihao would send a large army to block their way. That would be troublesome. Someone, give me a brush, ink, paper, and an inkstone. When the eldest princess heard the left prime minister's words, she nodded and waved her hand. Soon, a palace maid came to the left prime minister with a brush, ink, paper, and an inkstone. The left prime minister stared at the palace maid. The palace maid trembled and almost threw the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone to the ground. The left prime minister grabbed the inkstone and said coldly to the palace maid, turn around. When the palace maid heard the left prime minister's words, she immediately turned around, trembling. Seeing the left prime minister being so secretive, the ministers could not help but be curious about what the left prime minister had written. However, the left prime minister wrote very quickly. He typed a few words so that the people behind him could not tell what he had written. Your Majesty, please take a look. The left prime minister folded the paper and handed it to the palace maid. The palace maid took the paper with trembling hands and handed it slowly to the eldest princess. Seeing the left prime minister being so secretive, the princess could not help but be curious. The first princess was shocked when she saw the words on the paper. She then looked at the left prime minister. Looking at the eldest princess's gaze, the left prime minister nodded solemnly. Seeing this, the ministers became even more curious. Prime Minister, when do you think is a good time to depart? The first princess asked the left prime minister. Right away, the left prime minister replied directly. Why are you in such a hurry? The eldest princess frowned as she did not expect the left prime minister to be in such a hurry to leave. Your Majesty, time is money. We can't afford to waste any time. If we do, I'm worried that something will go wrong. The left prime minister replied. All right then, let's set off immediately. Hearing the left prime minister's words, the eldest princess no longer refused and directly agreed. Prime Minister, how should we deal with the ministers who didn't attend court today? At this moment, the eldest princess suddenly asked with a cold glint in her eyes. Hearing the first princess's words, the hearts of all the ministers trembled. The left prime minister naturally knew what the first princess meant. He said coldly, kill them. Then we'll follow the prime minister's suggestion. Whoever does this has to kill all 9 generations of those people. The eldest princess said with a murderous look in her eyes. Since those ministers were afraid of death, she naturally would not let them live. What? Kill all 9 generations of their families? Hearing the eldest princess's words, the expressions of all the ministers changed. Your Majesty, isn't it too serious to kill all 9 generations of their families? That's right. Although those people did not attend court and should be punished, there's no need to kill all 9 generations of their families. Perhaps those people are really sick. Many of the ministers present felt insecure and begged for mercy on behalf of those ministers. What? Do you have any objections to my way of dealing with them? The eldest princess raised her eyebrows and looked at all the ministers with a murderous look. Sensing the eldest princess's murderous look, those ministers who wanted to speak up swallowed their words. They were all as cunning as foxes. How could they possibly sacrifice their lives for someone else? Long live His Majesty! All the ministers immediately knelt on the ground and saluted. Lord Joe, I heard that many of the ministers who did not attend court today are your old friends? The eldest princess suddenly looked at one of the ministers. Hearing the eldest princess's words, all the ministers looked at Lord Joe. Many of them even looked at him with pity. Lord Joe's heart trembled when he heard the eldest princess's words, but he still gritted his teeth and said, "Yes, Your Majesty." After all, he knew that it was impossible to hide such a thing even if he wanted to. Then I'll give you a task. Send these ministers on their way. The eldest princess said with a smile. What? Lord Joe's face turned ashen when he heard the eldest princess's words. He hurriedly refused in a fluster. This, Your Majesty, please find someone else. After all, this was killing his good friend and killing all 9 generations of his family. How could Lord Joe agree? The expressions of the others also changed. Clearly, they had not expected the eldest princess to be so ruthless as to give Lord Joe this task. What? Lord Joe, do you want to defy the edict? Do you know that defying the edict will result in 9 generations of your family being killed? The eldest princess's gaze turned cold when she saw Lord Joe's refusal. Lord Joe's body trembled violently when he heard the eldest princess's words. This was a blatant threat. If he did not do this, not only would his life be in danger, but the lives of his family members would also be in danger. However, if he did this, he would feel uneasy for the rest of his life. Your Majesty, Lord Joe raised his head and looked pleadingly at the eldest princess, hoping that the eldest princess would change her mind. However, he did not dare to defy the edict directly. After all, this concerned the lives of his family members. Lord Joe, this is a chance for you to show your loyalty to me. If you do this to my satisfaction, I will promote you to a 2nd-grade official. The eldest princess continued without waiting for Lord Joe to finish. Lord Joe was not in the mood to care about his official position at this moment. That's enough, Lord Joe. Her Majesty is praising you. Don't fail to appreciate her kindness. The left Prime Minister was usually at odds with Lord Joe and the others. Now that he finally had a chance to deal with Lord Joe, how could he let it go to waste? Lord Joe had always been displeased with the left Prime Minister, but he could not do anything about the left Prime Minister's position and power. Lord Joe's eyes turned bloodshot when he heard the left Prime Minister's words. Chapter 9:69. However, all the officials were busy protecting themselves. How could they risk their lives to speak up for him? Lord Joe, why are you still hesitating? Seeing that Lord Joe was silent, the eldest princess looked at him. Hearing the eldest princess's words and seeing that no one was speaking up for him, Lord Joe could only withdraw his gaze in disappointment. I accept the edict. Lord Joe had no choice but to kneel down and accept the edict. Tears welled up in his eyes, and his lips were trembling. That's my beloved official. Seeing that Lord Joe had agreed, the eldest princess immediately laughed. Prime Minister, we can't let Lord Joe tire himself out. Send an official to help Lord Joe. The eldest princess said to the left Prime Minister. Yes, Your Majesty. Hearing the eldest princess's words, the left Prime Minister smiled. He knew that the eldest princess was not sending someone to help Lord Joe. She was asking him to send his trusted aide to keep an eye on Lord Joe. Lord Son, go help Lord Joe and share his burden. The left Prime Minister looked at one of his trusted aides and said, Yes, Your Majesty. I will do my best to share Lord Joe's burden. Lord Son knew what the left Prime Minister meant when he saw the look on his face and quickly said. Lord Joe did not care about what these people said and did not listen to them at all. He knew that the eldest princess was using him as an example to make an example out of him. No matter what he said, it would be useless. At this moment, Lord Joe's heart was completely cold. He had sided with the eldest princess partly because he was thinking about his own future. However, most of it was because he was loyal to the eldest princess. However, the eldest princess was doing this now. How could he not be disappointed? There's no time to lose. Do it now. Remember, don't let any fish escape the net. The eldest princess continued to remind him. The reason why she was doing this was that she was so vicious. That was what she had discussed with the left prime minister. After all, as the empress, she knew that everyone had been frightened by Yi Hao. If she did not think of a way, the morale of her troops would be greatly affected and her power would be completely destroyed. As the saying went, one had to use severe methods to bring chaos to the country. The more dangerous the situation was, the more severe she had to be so that all the officials would fear her and not dare to betray her easily. Only by intimidating these ministers would they listen to him obediently and listen to his orders. And if he wanted to do that, he naturally had to make an example out of them. And these chickens were naturally the ministers who hadn't attended court, because in her opinion, these people were not loyal to her. Since they were not loyal to her, she naturally couldn't let them live. Thus, these people naturally became the chickens that were killed to warn the monkeys. The reason why Lord Joe was chosen to kill those officials and their families was, of course, related to the left prime minister. Most importantly, Lord Joe's position was not weak among the ministers. This was also a warning to the other ministers. She was even willing to make a move on Lord Joe. If the remaining ministers wanted to mess around, they had to consider themselves first. It was clear that all the ministers were looking at the first princess with a trace of fear in their eyes. Lord Joe, let's go. Lord Sun glanced at Lord Joe and said. Lord Joe seemed to have lost consciousness. He was in a daze as he left the hall with a sorrowful look on his face. After Lord Joe left, the first princess spoke again. All of you, quickly bring your families and wait for me to set off and evacuate the imperial capital. We obey. Long live the emperor. All the ministers shouted in unison when they received the first princess order. The entire Sky Origin Imperial City was thrown into chaos. All the ministers were sorting out their wealth and gathering their families in preparation to leave with the first princess. Another piece of news also surged and caused a stir in the Sky Origin Imperial City. No one had expected that the first princess would actually do such a thing before leaving. She had actually slaughtered the ministers and their families. Surname Zhou, I was wrong about you. Zhou, you actually slaughtered my family. I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Zhou, you are too vicious. You will suffer retribution. It's one thing to kill me, but you actually kill my children. You watch them grow up. How could you bear to do that? Lord Zhou's ears were constantly ringing with the curses of his old friends. Lord Zhou's heart was bleeding when he heard the curses, but he couldn't open his mouth to explain. Lord Zhou, do it. Don't waste time. Lord Sun looked at Lord Zhou with a pained expression and couldn't help but remind him. I don't need you to remind me of what I'm doing. Lord Zhou was also furious and couldn't help but shout at Lord Sunday. Lord Sun's mouth twitched when he saw Lord Zhou's angry appearance. He secretly sneered and was very pleased with himself. However, Lord Sun still had to give Lord Zhou face and couldn't help but nod. Lord Zhou, please. After saying that, Lord Sun couldn't help but retreat to the side and order the guards. All of you, watch carefully. If one person is missing, I'll have your head. I'm sorry, I had no choice. Lord Zhou saw that all his old friends were cursing him with sinister expressions. Lord Zhou couldn't help but mutter. Then, he painfully turned around and closed his eyes. Lord Zhou trembled as he raised his hand. Clang, clang, clang. Seeing Lord Zhou raise his hand, countless soldiers pulled out their weapons. They looked directly at Lord Zhou's hand. As long as Lord Zhou's hand fell, they would raise their weapons and chop off everyone's heads. Lord Zhou was filled with regret. If he had another chance, he definitely wouldn't have followed the left prime minister and led his own troops to rescue the first princess. Now, even though the first princess had been rescued and she had become the empress, he didn't get any benefits. Yet, not only did he not obtain any benefits, he even had to kill his old friends. At this moment, Lord Zhou's intestines were green with regret. Lord Zhou's heart was in a mess, but he couldn't bear to lower his raised hand. Lord Zhou, don't make His Majesty wait too long. Otherwise, His Majesty will punish you. Lord Sun spoke again while Lord Zhou was struggling in pain. Moreover, the other lords have already started to send their families away. Lord Zhou, your family probably isn't ready yet. If you speak any more nonsense, I'll kill you. Hearing Lord Sun's words, Lord Zhou looked at Lord Sun with bloodshot eyes. Seeing Lord Zhou's bloodshot eyes, Lord Sun suddenly said, "Kill them." Hearing Lord Sun's words, the guards didn't hesitate and raised their weapons. Thousands of heads fell to the ground. Chapter 970. Lord Zhou turned around angrily, but all he saw was a floor full of human heads and corpses. At this moment, Lord Zhou's entire body was trembling with anger. Lord Zhou, please calm down. I'm helping you. Lord Zhou, you've done well this time. I'm sure His Majesty will be very satisfied. I'll put in a good word for you when I return. Let's go. Lord Sun waved his hand and left with his guard without waiting for Lord Zhou's reply. Lord Zhou's lips turned pale when he saw the corpses all over the floor. He could no longer hold back his tears, and they gushed out. Men, collect the corpses, Lord Zhou said in a trembling voice. After all, the relatives of these officials have been executed. If he didn't collect their corpses would definitely be exposed on the streets. So if he didn't collect the corpses, who would? However, as soon as he finished speaking, before his subordinates could make a move, Lord Sun suddenly stopped in his tracks. Lord Zhou, His Majesty has decreed that the corpses of these traitorous officials should be exposed on the streets as a warning. No one is to collect their corpses. Lord Sun said gloatingly, "Why can't we collect the corpses? Why would His Majesty give such an order?" Lord Zhou asked in disbelief when he heard Lord Sun's words. That's because His Majesty has some connections with Yi Hao or the third princess. That's why he did this, Lord Sun replied. I don't care. I'll collect their corpses even if I have to give up my life. Lord Zhou shouted angrily. He was clearly going all out. He was already feeling very guilty and uneasy about carrying out this mission. Now, he wasn't even allowed to collect the corpses. If he really didn't care about these people's corpses and left them exposed on the streets, he probably wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace for the rest of his life. Do it. With that, Lord Zhou ordered the guards. Let's see who dares to do it. That's a crime punishable by death. Lord Sun shouted when he saw that the guards were about to attack. However, the guards looked at each other when they heard Lord Sun's words. They looked hesitant and didn't dare to attack. All of you sigh. Since you're afraid of death, I'm not. Lord Zhou wanted to do it himself when he saw that the guards didn't dare to attack. As for the guards, they lowered their heads in shame. Lord Zhou, it's fine if you're not afraid of death. I heard that your son recently got a wife and even gave birth to a grandson for you. Are they not afraid of death? Lord Sun sneered as he looked at Lord Zhou. Lord Zhou froze when he heard Lord Sun's words. You're threatening me. Lord Zhou's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at Lord Sunday. His eyes were filled with killing intent. How would I dare to threaten Lord Zhou? I'm just reminding Lord Zhou to think about the bigger picture. Ha ha! After Lord Sun finished speaking, he laughed heartily and left. PFFF, seeing Lord Sun leave, Lord Zhou could no longer hold back his anger. He was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. My lord, my lord, my lord. Seeing Lord Zhou vomit blood, Lord Zhou's guards all came forward worriedly. All of you leave. You won't get anywhere by following me, Lord Zhou said to the guards. But my lord, although many of the guards were afraid of death, it was also because of their family. But no matter what, they had followed Lord Zhou for a long time. Now that they heard Lord Zhou's words, they naturally couldn't bear to leave. Cough, cough, leave. Who knows? You might be able to keep your lives. Lord Zhou coughed violently. There was still blood at the corner of his mouth. Then, my lord, we'll leave. Seeing Lord Zhou like this, everyone left reluctantly. Everyone, we've made the wrong move. We've made a complete mistake. If we had sided with the third princess back then, we might not have ended up like this. Lord Zhou watched as everyone left. All that was left in front of him were corpses. He couldn't help but kneel on the ground in frustration. At this moment, Lord Zhou's fingernails had already dug into his flesh. It was obvious how angry he was. Your Majesty, since you're so heartless, don't blame me for being unjust. Lord Zhou's eyes were filled with hatred. As the saying went, if the ruler wanted the subject to die, the subject had no choice but to die. But this time, the first princess's actions had completely broken his heart. One had to know that in order to side with the first princess, he had used his entire family as a bet. As for these old friends of his, although some of them were afraid of death, some of them were physically fit. But no matter what, the first princess had been rescued and ascended to the throne. These ministers had carried the crime of treason and had contributed a lot to the first princess. But the first princess had killed all of them indiscriminately. And what he couldn't accept the most was that the first princess had killed all of the ministers' families in order to make an example out of them. There was nothing wrong with killing all of the ministers' families. Perhaps the first princess had considered the bigger picture. But why was she not even allowed to collect the corpses? He had done his best to support the first princess and was still loyal to the first princess. But in the end, it had turned out like this. No one could accept it. Old friends, I'll give your families an explanation. Bang, bang, bang. Lord Zhou's head hit the ground several times. Then, Lord Zhou stood up and dragged his tired body away. It could be seen that Lord Zhou, who had been holding his head high, was now hunched over. My lord, there's news from the imperial city. The first princess wants to bring people and escape from the imperial city of Tianjin. What? The first princess has abandoned the imperial city of Tianjin and escaped? So suddenly. Hearing the spy's report, Yi Hao was shocked. He thought that the first princess might fight him to the death. He also thought that the first princess might continue to work with the second princess to deal with him. She might even seek outside help. But he really didn't think that the first princess would abandon the imperial city of Tianjin and escape in such a hurry. She didn't even give him a chance to react. At least she's smart. She can survive for a few more days. Yi Hao quickly recovered from the shock and praised the first princess. After all, Sun Shangxiang and Song Xiaoyan's army had almost finished dealing with the captives. If the first princess stayed and fought him to the death, it would be like hitting a rock with an egg. Do you know where the first princess is retreating to? Yi Hao asked. I don't know. It seems that only the first princess and the left prime minister know. The spy quickly replied. Oh, so secretive? Yi Hao couldn't help but be interested when he heard the spy's words. My lord, should we pursue the victory so that we don't let the tiger return to the mountain? One of the generals asked. After all, letting the tiger return to the mountain would be a big problem in the future. Letting the tiger return to the mountain? She's not considered a tiger. Yi Hao sneered. But even if the general didn't say anything, Yi Hao wouldn't let the first princess off. Chapter 971. Go and see if Sun Shangxiang has resolved the issue of the captives. If so, tell her to take down the eldest princess's army. Yi Hao ordered one of the generals. Yes, your majesty. The general left quickly after receiving Yi Hao's order. My lord, the palace is now ownerless. We should take control of it as soon as possible. That's right. The imperial city is very important. We have to take it. If we take the imperial city, our morale will be greatly boosted. The generals present all looked at Yi Hao and spoke one after another. After all, most of these generals were citizens of the Tianyuan kingdom. They naturally felt that the imperial city was extraordinary. After all, the imperial city was a symbol of power in their hearts. As Yi Hao's subordinates, They naturally hoped that Yi Hao could hide in the imperial city as soon as possible, so that Yi Hao could ascend to the throne as soon as possible. Go and order Song Xiaotian to head to the Tianyuan imperial city as soon as possible and take it down, Yi Hao ordered after hearing the general's suggestions. We have rested for so many days. It's time to move out. Pass down the order and prepare to set off. They were waiting for Sun Shangxiang and Song Xiaotian to subdue the captives and deal with them. Yi Hao's army couldn't move and had rested for quite some time. He had originally thought that it would take some time before he could take down the Tianyuan imperial city. However, he hadn't expected that the eldest princess would voluntarily give up the Tianyuan imperial city. This was a pleasant surprise. Only by taking down the Tianyuan imperial city would he be able to ascend to the throne legitimately. Then, he would be able to show his prowess and accomplish some of the things that he had already planned. When the generals present heard Yi Hao's order, they all bowed respectfully and said, "Yes, Your Majesty." Following Yi Hao's order, the army under Yi Hao's command moved out immediately. When Sun Shangxiang received Yi Hao's order and heard that the eldest princess and the others wanted to escape, he immediately rushed forward. He led 1,000,000 soldiers and rushed towards the Tianyuan imperial city. As for the remaining troops, they were left behind by Sun Shangxiang to deal with the captives. After all, there were many captives, and bringing them along would definitely drag down the army. Even though the captives had joined the army, they were still lacking in terms of quality. He still couldn't reach the standard of an ordinary soldier. As for the captives who didn't join the army, they couldn't be brought to the battlefield. Therefore, after much consideration, Sun Shangxiang decided to leave some men behind to watch over these captives. It was the same for Song Xiaotian. He was unwilling to fall behind. Not long after Sun Shangxiang left, Song Xiaotian also set off with his army. He followed closely behind Sun Shangxiang's army and headed straight for Sky Origin Imperial City. The eldest princess had also received news that Sun Shangxiang had led an army to pursue her. However, the first princess obeyed the left prime minister and left Tianyuan royal city early in the morning. The army had no idea where to go. The first princess was leading the way. Moreover, the army had taken many detours along the way, which made the generals and ministers very curious. This was because they couldn't figure out where the first princess was leading them to. "Prime Minister, are you ready?" The first princess looked at the left prime minister and asked meaningfully. The left prime minister looked around and nodded happily. "Your Majesty, don't worry. Everything is ready." "Ha, that's great. Thank you, Prime Minister." Seeing the left prime minister nod his head, the first princess was delighted and couldn't help but smile. "Your Majesty, what are you talking about? I'll go through fire and water for you," the left prime minister quickly replied. Hearing the left prime minister's words, the first princess nodded her head. "Just leave it. Prime Minister, you won't be able to take away any of the credit that belongs to you. After this, I'll reward you handsomely." "Thank you, Your Majesty. This is outrageous. This is outrageous. How could this be?" At this moment, the second princess frowned and said angrily. Looking at the large pile of letters in front of her, the second princess was furious. At the bottom of the pile was the news that her 5,000,000 soldiers had been defeated. Moreover, it was a complete defeat. Not a single soldier was left. The 5,000,000 soldiers were practically paving the way for Yi Hao. How could the second princess not be angry when she saw this? And now, she actually received news that the first princess had abandoned Tianyuan royal city and fled by herself. This caught the second princess off guard, and she didn't even have the chance to react. Even before this, the second princess was still thinking about how to deal with Yi Hao. She was an ally of the first princess. But now, the first princess, who was an ally of the first princess, had fled by herself without a word. This made the second princess furious. Didn't this mean that she would have to fight alone and deal with Yi Hao in the coming days? After all, her troops were not even as strong as the first princess's. Now that the first princess had fled, how was she going to fight Yi Hao? Without a doubt, the first princess's departure meant that she had given up Tianyuan royal city to Yi Hao. when the time came, as long as Tianyuan royal city fell into Yi Hao's hands. By then, she would be Yi Hao's opponent. She didn't believe that Yi Hao would show mercy to her when the time came. Yi Hao would definitely make an example out of her. Do you know where the first princess has fled to? Although the second princess was angry that the first princess had fled without saying a word, she was still angry. But the second princess was still very curious about where the first princess had fled to. Hearing the second princess's question, the spy shook his head and said, "Your Majesty, the first princess's escape route is uncertain and constantly changing. We can't figure out where the first princess has fled to." "That's strange. What game is she playing?" The second princess couldn't help but wonder. She didn't expect the first princess to have hidden the news so well this time that they couldn't find out where the first princess was leading her troops to. The more it was like this, the more the second princess felt that this was no small matter. But the thing that made the second princess the most angry was to discover these things first. At this moment, she was doubting whether the two people Hong Qingyun had sent were 10th Order Demon Emperors. Was it Hong Qingyun who was toying with her? One had to know that if there were really two 10th Order Demon Emperors, why didn't they cause any harm to Sun Shangxiang? It was because she believed in the two 10th Order Demon Emperors from the Hong Qingyun sect. That was why she had sent 5 million troops to join forces with the first princess to take the initiative to attack Yi Hao. But now, not only was there no news of the two 10th Order Demon Emperors, even his 150 soldiers have been wiped out. At this moment, the second princess couldn't help but feel some resentment towards Hong Qingyun. Chapter 972. Your Majesty, young Master Hong Qingyun requests an audience. Just as the second princess was fuming, a guard outside the hall suddenly reported. Hearing that it was Hong Qingyun, the second princess's anger soared to the sky, and she shouted coldly, "No, Your Majesty, even if you don't give Qingyun face, you have to give the Black Sword sect face." The right prime minister naturally knew why the second princess was unwilling to see Hong Qingyun. To be honest, he was also very puzzled in his heart. Why did he send two 10th Order Demon Emperors, and there seemed to be no movement at all? Moreover, the second princess had lost 150 soldiers. As a prime minister, he was also very pained. But no matter what, Hong Qingyun was his adopted son and Hong Wujin's grandson. He had to curry favor with Hong Qingyun. So at this time, he naturally jumped out and spoke up for Hong Qingyun. Obviously, although the second princess was angry, she did not lose her mind. When he heard the Black Sword sect, the anger on his face lessened, but he still said with dissatisfaction, "I have something to ask him. Summon him in." Summon young Master Hong Qingyun for an audience. After receiving the second princess's order, the eunuch beside her immediately shouted, "Ha! Your Majesty, why are you so angry?" Hong Qingyun walked in with his head held high and his chest puffed out. Looking at the second princess's cold expression, Hong Qingyun could not help but laugh. As for Hong Qingyun, he disappeared from the second princess's sight after sending two demon emperors to kill Sun Shangxiang. Others did not know what Hong Qingyun had done. Only Hong Qingyun himself knew. No one would have guessed that Hong Qingyun had spent all this time indulging in the pleasures of the brothels and was completely unaware of what was going on outside. So Hong Qingyun thought that the two demon emperors he sent out had killed Sun Shangxiang. Don't pretend to be confused. Looking at Hong Qingyun's appearance, the second princess snorted coldly. After all, that was an army of 1.5 million soldiers. How could her heart not bleed when she lost all of them? Besides the hatred for Yi Hao, the second princess's dissatisfaction and anger were all superimposed on Hong Qingyun. Moreover, the fact that Hong Qingyun was still able to maintain his rationality was already very good. She was already very polite to Hong Qingyun. If it weren't for Hong Qingyun's background, she definitely wouldn't be so polite to him. Seeing that the second princess seemed to be really angry, Hong Qingyun was confused. He had helped her out of kindness, but now she was angry at him. Hong Qingyun even wondered if the second princess wanted to renege on her debt after his men killed Sun Shangxiang. At the thought of this, Hong Qingyun's face turned cold. He had never been one to suffer a loss. If the second princess wanted to go back on her word, it would be impossible for her to do so in front of him. Hong Qingyun's gaze swept across the entire hall, and his tone became serious. "Where are my men?" "Your men? Young Master Qingyun has come all the way to my palace?" Seeing Hong Qingyun sweep his gaze across the palace, and hearing his words, the second princess became even more furious. The way she saw it, Hong Qingyun was deliberately trying to humiliate her. "The 2 guards I sent to kill Sun Shangxiang haven't returned yet?" Hong Qingyun frowned and asked. "Huh, young Master Qingyun is really good at acting." Hearing Hong Qingyun's words, the second princess sneered. "What do you mean?" Hearing the second princess's sneer, Hong Qingyun was very unhappy. "Young Master Qingyun, don't you know that because of you, I lost 1.5 million soldiers? A total of 150 soldiers." The second princess stood up angrily. In the second princess's opinion, if Hong Qingyun hadn't said that she had sent 2 10th Order Demon Emperors to kill Sun Shangxiang, she wouldn't have done so. She wouldn't have sent so many soldiers. If she hadn't sent so many soldiers, she wouldn't have suffered so many losses. Moreover, she suspected that she had been played by Hong Qingyun. From the beginning to the end, Hong Qingyun didn't send the 2 10th Order Demon Emperors to kill Sun Shangxiang. After all, if Hong Qingyun had really sent 2 10th Order Demon Emperors to kill Sun Shangxiang, how could Sun Shangxiang still be alive? If Sun Shangxiang had been killed, wouldn't it be easy for her army to annihilate Sun Shangxiang's army? But now, Sun Shangxiang was fine, and Sun Shangxiang's army was also fine. On the other hand, her and the first princess's army, a total of 4 million soldiers, was completely destroyed. 1.5 million soldiers, so many. Hong Qingyun was shocked when he heard this number, but he was even more puzzled. What does your loss of 1.5 million soldiers have to do with me? The second princess sneered and continued to ask. "Then I ask young Master Qingyun, did you really send out the 2 10th Order Demon Emperors you sent?" "What do you mean? You don't trust this young master?" Hearing the second princess's words, Hong Qingyun was slightly angered. But if young Master Qingyun really sent out the 2 10th Order Demon Emperors, then why is Sun Shangxiang still alive? At this point, the second princess simply shouted angrily. "What did you say? Sun Shangxiang is still alive?" Hearing the second princess's words, Hong Qingyun's face suddenly changed. Because the 2 guards hadn't come to find him for so long, he had a trace of a bad feeling. But he didn't take it seriously because he was full of confidence in the strength of the 2 guards. Moreover, he thought that the 2 guards didn't find him and were waiting for him at the second princess's place. But after hearing the second princess's words, Hong Qingyun had a bad premonition in his heart. "You didn't send anyone to kill Sun Shangxiang. So how could Sun Shangxiang be dead? Are you here to humiliate me? Or do you think I'm a fool and are here to play with me?" The second princess shouted angrily again. "What if this young master said that I did send people to kill Sun Shangxiang?" Hong Qingyun said calmly. "Then why is Sun Shangxiang still alive? Don't tell me you want to say that your 2 guards were killed by Sun Shangxiang." The second princess sneered. "Your Majesty, please calm down. I don't think Qingyun is lying. After all, Qingyun has no reason to lie to us. This is not good for him." Seeing the second princess angry, the right prime minister quickly stood up and said, "Foster father is right. Why would I lie to you?" Seeing the right prime minister stand up for him, Hong Qingyun looked at the second princess and said. The second princess slowly calmed down after hearing the right prime minister's words. The second princess glared at Hong Qingyun. Chapter 973. This young master said he would send them, so he sent them. Hong Qingyun's tone became a little tough. From Hong Qingyun's tone, one could tell that he was not in a good mood at the moment. After all, they were 2 10th Order Devil Emperor subordinates. Normally, they were his bodyguards, and he could show off. But now, there was a 90% chance that those two 10th Order Demon Emperor subordinates were already dead. Even he felt the pain, and at the same time, a murderous aura spread out from his body. Ever since he found out that his grandfather was Hong Wujian, he had never suffered such a big loss. Therefore, with his personality, he would definitely take revenge. Moreover, even if he did not take revenge, he had to. After all, the ones who died were two 10th Order Demon Emperors. This was not a small matter, and he might not be able to hide it. Not to mention his grandfather, even the Black Sword sect would not agree to killing people of the Black Sword sect. After all, the people of the Black Sword sect were not people that could be provoked. Moreover, although the two 10th Order Demon Emperors were his subordinates, their position in the Black Sword sect was extraordinary. The reason why those two 10th Order Demon Emperors were able to become his personal bodyguards and protect his safety was entirely because of the Hong Wujian. However, no matter how high his grandfather's position in the Black Sword sect was, it was still his grandfather. After all, the Black Sword sect was not his grandfather, and he had the final say. Therefore, his grandfather had to give the Black Sword sect an explanation for the death of these two 10th Order Demon Emperors. Are you sure that Sun Shangxiang is a 10th Order Demon Emperor? Hong Qingyun looked at the second princess and asked. At this moment, he was very suspicious that Sun Shangxiang's strength was definitely not a 10th Order Demon Emperor. After all, to be able to kill two 10th Order Demon Emperors, the possibility of his cultivation being a 10th Order Demon Emperor was very small. Unless this person's talent was extraordinary and could crush cultivators of the same level. But such people were very rare and could be said to be 1 in 10,000. Therefore, Hong Qingyun was very suspicious that Sun Shangxiang's strength had reached the Atman body realm. Hearing Hong Qingyun's question, the second princess suddenly did not dare to be sure. After all, Sun Shangxiang's strength was equivalent to a 10th Order Devil Emperor, but she couldn't be sure if Sun Shangxiang had concealed his strength. Regardless of whether Sun Shangxiang is a 10th Order Demon Emperor or not, her cultivation is definitely not something an ordinary 10th Order Demon Emperor can deal with. Hong Qingyun said when he saw the second princess's hesitation. Doesn't that mean the two 10th Order Demon Emperors you sent have been killed? The second princess calmed down the anger in her heart and asked in shock. After all, that was a 10th Order Demon Emperor. Even the Tianyuan Kingdom did not have a single 10th Order Demon Emperor. Then who exactly is he? The second princess couldn't help but think of Yi Hao. After all, Sun Shangxiang was so powerful that he could kill two 10th Order Devil Emperors. However, Sun Shangxiang was only Yi Hao's subordinate. One could imagine how terrifying Yi Hao's background was. This also made the second princess even more afraid of Yi Hao. After all, Yi Hao had Sun Shangxiang as a subordinate. She couldn't be Yi Hao's opponent. Not to mention anything else, even if Sun Shangxiang attacked her palace, she couldn't stop it. According to the current situation, they're probably dead. Hong Qingyun said with a pale face. Then what do you plan to do, young Master Qingyun? Are we just going to let it go? The second princess's eyes flashed with a hint of cunning as she looked at Hong Qingyun. The second princess had no other thoughts now. She just wanted to provoke the conflict between Hong Qingyun and Yi Hao. This way, she could kill with a borrowed knife. After all, she was quite optimistic about the Black Sword sect's strength. Moreover, Hong Qingyun's grandfather was the Black Sword sect's 5th Supreme Elder. She believed that as long as she provoked Hong Qingyun and Yi Hao's conflict, at that time, Hong Wujian would not sit back and watch. As long as Hong Wujian made a move, she didn't believe that Yi Hao would be able to survive. As long as Yi Hao died, the Tianyuan Kingdom would be hers. It could be said that the second princess had a good plan in her heart at this moment. In her opinion, when two tigers fought, one would be injured. At that time, she just needed to sit back and reap the benefits. However, she was more optimistic about Hong Qingyun. After all, behind Hong Qingyun stood the entire Black Sword sect. One had to know that the entire Black Sword sect could be said to be full of experts. Otherwise, Hong Qingyun's guard wouldn't be a 10th Order Demon Emperor powerhouse. Probably only the Black Sword sect could have a 10th Order Demon Emperor powerhouse as a guard. According to her understanding, Yi Hao's subordinates were only Sun Shangxiang and Huang Zhong. Even if Sun Shangxiang and Huang Zhong were strong, could they fight against the entire Black Sword sect? Let it go just like that, wishful thinking. Hearing the second princess's words, Hong Qingyun coldly snorted. Daring to kill my people, I will definitely bury him with me. Hong Qingyun's heart was filled with anger. Young Master Qingyun, calm down. That Yi Hao is not to be trifled with. Hearing Hong Qingyun's words, the second princess laughed in her heart, but said with a worried face, He is not to be trifled with, but this young master is? In front of this young master, he is nothing. Hearing the second princess's words, Hong Qingyun was even more disdainful. After all, he was very unhappy when he heard that his subordinates had died. Moreover, he was arrogant and greedy for women. The second princess was the woman he liked, and he even regarded the second princess as his exclusive property. At this moment, hearing the second princess say that Yi Hao was not to be trifled with, in his opinion, the second princess was saying that he was not as good as Yi Hao. How could he accept it? How could he know that the second princess was deliberately provoking him? The prime minister was a cunning old fox and naturally understood the second princess's thoughts. Although Hong Qingyun was his adopted son and he wanted to curry favor with Hong Qingyun, the prime minister felt that he was in a better position than Hong Qingyun. However, in his eyes, the imperial court was more suitable for him. For the sake of his future and his current position, he naturally wouldn't expose the second princess. Ahem, Qingyun, that Yi Hao is not from the Tianyuan kingdom, so we can't find out where he is from. Furthermore, this Yi Hao does have a lot of tricks up his sleeves. We should pay attention to this. After thinking for a moment, the prime minister decided to speak up for the second princess, so he told Hong Qingyun, Who cares what tricks he has up his sleeves? In the face of strength, they are nothing, Hong Qingyun said arrogantly. Given his character, how could he allow anyone to say that someone was stronger than him in front of him? Young Master Qingyun, how do you plan to deal with Yi Hao? The second princess asked tentatively when she saw that Hong Qingyun had taken the bait. Chapter 974. Hearing Hong Qingyun's words, the second princess was overjoyed because she had achieved her goal. However, the second princess pretended to be worried and asked, Master Hong Wujian is busy. Will he care about this? Grandpa loves me so much. How can he not care? Hong Qingyun's tone was full of confidence. By the way, after dealing with Yi Hao, I plan to propose marriage to Your Majesty. What do you think, Your Majesty? Hong Qingyun looked at the beautiful second princess and asked with his heart rippling. This. The second princess did not expect Hong Qingyun to propose marriage to her. She hesitated immediately. The right prime minister stepped forward and winked at the second princess. Your Majesty, Qingyun is handsome and talented. He and Your Majesty are a match made in heaven. Your Majesty, please agree. The right prime minister was looking forward to the second princess's agreement. After all, if the second princess and Hong Qingyun could really tie the knot, it would be equivalent to the second princess clinging to the Black Sword sect. By then, the Tianyuan kingdom would definitely be tied to the Black Sword sect. By then, no one would dare to provoke them. The right prime minister could almost see the Tianyuan kingdom being completely controlled by the second princess and a scene of prosperity. By then, his status would be second only to one person and no one would dare provoke him. After all, Hong Qingyun was his adopted son and the second princess trusted him so much. If the second princess married Hong Qingyun, the second princess would be his daughter-in-law. He was the prime minister and the second princess would be his daughter-in-law. Who could compare with such a status? Seeing the right prime minister winking at her, the second princess was still very hesitant. Although she already had a husband, it was just a title. But that was just a name only. It was just for the sake of fighting for the throne. Thus, it could be said that she was still alone. As the second princess, she naturally had countless pursuers. Among them, there was no lack of geniuses. However, she did not get together with anyone. It showed how high her standards were. Although Hong Qingyun's status was high, she naturally did not think highly of him. Because in the past few days, although she did not know where Hong Qingyun had gone, she heard a lot about Hong Qingyun's flirting. Although she couldn't confirm that it was Hong Qingyun, in her opinion, it wasn't far from the truth. But now that things had come to this, it looked like if he did not agree to Hong Qingyun's request, Hong Qingyun would not take things lying down either. The second princess had no choice but to agree. After all, she cared more about the Hong Five Swords and the Black Sword sect behind Hong Qingyun. The second princess said, "All right, I'll be waiting for young Master Qingyun to propose at any time. Haha, then prepare the wedding banquet for me." Hong Qingyun laughed and then disappeared from the hall. "Congratulations, Your Majesty." After Hong Qingyun left, the right prime minister hurriedly congratulated him. However, the second princess didn't have much of a smile on her face. She couldn't help but look at the right prime minister. "What's the good news?" "Your humble servant congratulates Your Majesty on solving Yi Hao's problem and finding your ideal husband at the same time." The prime minister of the right said, "Are you that confident that you can deal with Yi Hao?" The second princess asked the right prime minister, "Your Majesty, you have to believe in the strength of the Black Sword sect. The huge Tianyuan kingdom will definitely belong to Your Majesty. Yi Hao destroyed our army of 1.5 million. When the time comes, we will definitely pay him back several times over." The right prime minister said confidently. Clearly, the right prime minister was full of confidence in Hong Qingyun and the Black Sword sect. "I hope so." The second princess nodded when she heard the right prime minister's words. However, she was not in high spirits. Clearly, the second princess was still not optimistic about Hong Qingyun and was still brooding over this matter. The right prime minister could tell what the second princess was thinking. He couldn't help but say to the second princess, "Your Majesty, if there's nothing else, please dismiss the court. Your humble servant has a few words to say to Your Majesty." "Dismiss the court," the second princess immediately said when she saw this. "Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor!" All the ministers immediately left. "Prime Minister, if you have anything to say, just say it," the second princess asked as she watched all the ministers leave and the doors of the hall closed. "Your Majesty, are you looking down on Qingyun?" The right prime minister looked at the second princess cautiously. The second princess frowned when she heard the right prime minister's question. A murderous intent appeared on her body as she stared at the right prime minister. "What do you mean by that?" "Your Majesty, please calm down. Your humble servant is loyal and devoted to you. I only think of Your Majesty," the right prime minister quickly said, afraid that the second princess would be angry. "Continue." The second princess looked at the right prime minister sternly, as usual. "Your humble servant has been following Your Majesty for a long time. No one understands Your Majesty's character better than me. Your Majesty will definitely look down on Qingyun." The right prime minister spoke the truth. After all, he had chosen a side with the second princess long ago. After so long, he naturally understood the second princess's character very well. Yes. The second princess's attitude softened when she heard the right prime minister's words. After all, in her heart, the right prime minister was the greatest contributor to her being able to reach this day and ascend to the throne. Therefore, she was very grateful to the right prime minister in her heart. The right prime minister heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the second princess's attitude had softened. He continued, "Your Majesty, although you look down on Qingyun, how many people we can get in touch with can compare Qingyun? Moreover, if we don't curry favor with Qingyun, Qingyun will not be willing to help us get rid of Yi Hao. If we don't solve this problem in the future, we will probably lose our lives. Although Your Majesty marrying Qingyun may be a little inconvenient, Your Majesty should consider the country. As long as Your Majesty is with Qingyun, Qingyun will definitely do his best to help Your Majesty conquer the Tianyuan kingdom. If Your Majesty has the means to control Qingyun, it is not impossible. By then, Your Majesty will definitely bring glory to the Tianyuan kingdom. After all, Qing Yun is backed by Hong Wujin. Qing Yun is Hong Wujin's only grandson. With Hong Wujin around, Qing Yun has unlimited potential. The right prime minister had been trying his best to persuade the second princess. After all, if they wanted to cling on to Hong Qing Yun's thigh, they had to let the second princess be with Hong Qing Yun. After all, if the second princess suddenly changed her mind and did not want to marry Hong Qing Yun, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble if she angered Hong Qing Yun. Chapter 975. Grandfather. Hong Qing Yun barged into Hong Wujin's residence as soon as he returned to the Black Sword sect. Good grandson, why are you back so early this time? Why are you in such a hurry? Did you miss your grandfather? Hong Wujin asked with a smile when he saw Hong Qing Yun barging into his practice area. He was not angry at all. When the guards outside saw this, they could not help but sigh. Comparisons were odious. Usually, no one would dare to barge into Hong Wujin's practice area. It would be hard for them not to lose a layer of skin. Even the other supreme elders would not dare to do so. It was obvious how much Hong Wujin loved Hong Qing Yun from the bottom of her heart. Grandpa, I've suffered a great loss this time. Grandpa, please avenge me. Hong Qing Yun said to Hong Wujin indignantly. Suffered a loss? Who would dare to make my grandson suffer a loss? Are they tired of living? Seeing Hong Qing Yun's anger, Hong Wujin's face was also filled with anger. Where are the two guards that I sent to you? Hong Wujin asked. They've been killed. Hong Qing Yun replied cautiously. What? Hong Wujin was shocked when he heard Hong Qing Yun's words. What did you say? They are dead. How is that possible? Grandfather, how could I lie to you about this? Hong Qing Yun's face was also filled with anger. He said at the same time, I came back this time to ask grandfather to avenge them. Who did it? How dare they not give face to our Black Sword sect and kill our people? We must take revenge. Hearing Hong Qing Yun's words, Hong Wujin said with a face full of displeasure. Thank you, grandfather. Please avenge me. Hong Qing Yun said. Grandfather. Hong Qing Yun barged into Hong Wujin's residence as soon as he returned to the Black Sword sect. Good grandson, why are you back so early this time? You are in such a hurry. Did you miss me? Hong Wujin was not angry when he saw Hong Qing Yun barging into his practice area. Instead, he asked with a smile. When the guards outside saw this, they could not help but sigh. Comparisons were odious. Usually, no one would dare to barge into Hong Wujin's practice area. It would be hard for them not to lose a layer of skin. Even the other grand elders did not dare to do so. It was obvious how much Hong Wujin loved Hong Qing Yun from the bottom of her heart. Grandpa, I've suffered a great loss this time. Grandpa, please avenge me. Hong Qing Yun said to Hong Wujin indignantly. Lose out? Who would dare to make my grandson suffer? Are they tired of living? Seeing Hong Qing Yun's anger, Hong Wujin's face was also full of anger. Where are the two guards grandpa sent to you? Hong Wujin asked. They've been killed. Hong Qing Yun replied cautiously. What? Hearing Hong Qing Yun's words, Hong Wujin was shocked. What did you say? They were dead. How is this possible? Grandpa, how can I lie to you about this? Hong Qing Yun's face was also filled with anger. He said at the same time, I came back this time to ask grandfather to avenge them. Who did it? How dare they not give face to our Black Sword sect and kill our people? We must take revenge. Hearing Hong Qing Yun's words, Hong Wujin said with a face full of displeasure. Thank you, Grandpa. Grandpa. Hong Qing Yun returned to the Black Sword sect and barged into Hong Wujin's residence. Good grandson, why are you back so early this time? You're in such a hurry. Did you miss me? Hong Wujin was not angry when he saw Hong Qing Yun barging into his practice area. Instead, he asked with a smile. When the guards outside saw this, they could not help but sigh. Comparisons were odious. Usually, no one would dare to barge into Hong Wujin's practice area. It would be hard for them not to lose a layer of skin. Even the other grand elders would not dare to do so. It was obvious how much Hong Wujin loved Hong Qing Yun from the bottom of her heart. Grandpa, I've suffered a great loss this time. Grandpa, please avenge me. Hong Qingyun said to Hong Wujian indignantly. Suffered a loss? Who would dare to make my grandson suffer a loss? Are they tired of living? Seeing Hong Qingyun's anger, Hong Wujian's face was also filled with anger. Where are the two guards that I sent you? Hong Wujian asked. They've been killed. Hong Qingyun replied cautiously. What? Hong Wujian was shocked when he heard Hong Qingyun's words. What did you say? They're dead. How is that possible? Grandpa, how could I lie to you about this? Hong Qingyun's face was also filled with anger. He said at the same time, I came back this time to ask my grandfather to avenge them. Who did it? How dare they not give face to our Black Sword sect and kill our people? We must take revenge. Hearing Hong Qingyun's words, Hong Wujian said with a face full of displeasure. Thank you, Grandpa, for avenging me. Hong Qingyun said. Grandpa. Hong Qingyun barged into Hong Wujian's residence as soon as he returned to the Black Sword sect. Good grandson, why did you come back so early this time? You're in such a hurry. Did you miss me? Hong Wujian was not angry when he saw Hong Qingyun barging into his practice area. Instead, he asked with a smile. The guards outside could not help but sigh when they saw this. Comparisons were odious. Usually, no one would dare to barge into Hong Wujian's practice area. It would be difficult for them not to lose a layer of skin. Even the other Supreme Elders would not dare to do so. It was obvious how much Hong Wujian loved Hong Qingyun from the bottom of her heart. Grandpa, I've suffered a great loss this time. Grandpa, please avenge me. Hong Qingyun said to Hong Wujian indignantly. Suffered a loss? Who would dare to make my grandson suffer a loss? Are they tired of living? Seeing Hong Qingyun's anger, Hong Wujian's face was also filled with anger. Where are the two guards that I sent you? Hong Wujian asked. They've been killed. Hong Qingyun replied cautiously. What? Hong Wujian was shocked when he heard Hong Qingyun's words. What did you say? They're dead. How is that possible? Grandpa, how could I lie to you about this? Hong Qingyun's face was also filled with anger. He said at the same time, I came back this time to ask my grandfather to avenge them. Who did it? How dare they not give face to our Black Sword sect and kill our people? We must take revenge. Hearing Hong Qingyun's words, Hong Wujian said with a face full of displeasure. Thank you, Grandpa, for avenging me. Hong Qingyun said. Chapter 976. Since this matter concerns my grandson's happiness, and that kid actually dared to provoke my grandson and kill my people, Grandpa will naturally help you. Seeing Hong Qingyun's happy face, Hong Wujian naturally wouldn't spoil his mood and said directly, Then Grandpa, how many people do you plan to send to help me? Seeing Hong Wujian agree, Hong Qingyun quickly asked. Hong Wujian thought for a moment and said, I plan to send 10 10th Order Demon Emperors, 2 First Order Almond Body, and 1 Second Order Almond Body. What do you think? Hearing Hong Wujian's words, Hong Qingyun was ecstatic. Grandpa, what you said is true. Grandpa, why would I lie to you? Hong Wujian said with a smile. Hong Qingyun was ecstatic. Not to mention other things, just 10 10th Order Demon Emperors were enough to let him walk sideways outside the Black Sword sect. Not to mention, the Hong Five Swords had also sent him 2 Atman Body Level 1 and 1 Atman Body Level 2. One had to know that in the Black Sword sect, spiritualists were precious existences. Usually, when the Black Sword sect encountered some troublesome matters, Demon Emperors would be enough. It was rare for a spiritualist to come out, as they were all diligently cultivating. And for a spiritualist to come out, it must be a big matter. Hong Wujian sent 3 spiritualists to him, which showed Hong Wujian's love for him. Yihao, that dog, I must tear him into pieces. Hong Qingyun narrowed his eyes, revealing a trace of ruthlessness, and suddenly, he was full of pride. Grandpa, I will take my leave first. When he thought of killing Yihao and then marrying the second princess, Hong Qingyun's heart couldn't wait a moment longer. Hong Qingyun hurriedly said to Hong Wujian, You have nothing to do, and you can't accompany Grandpa. Hong Wujian saw that Hong Qingyun was about to leave, and his tone was reluctant. Don't worry, Grandpa. After killing that dog, I still want to ask Grandpa to preside over my wedding, Hong Qingyun hurriedly said to Hong Wujian. Good, good, good. At least you have a conscience. Hearing Hong Qingyun's words, Hong Wujian nodded in satisfaction with a happy smile on his face. Come here. Hong Wujian shouted. Master, what are your orders? A middle-aged man walked in and bowed respectfully to Hong Wujian. Second brother, go and pick 10 10th Order Devil Emperor disciples with your 2 junior brothers. Hong Wujian looked at the middle-aged man and then at Hong Qingyun. He said to the middle-aged man, Go down the mountain with Qingyun. Listen to Qingyun for the time being. Upon hearing Hong Wujian's order, Hong Yunhe looked at Hong Qingyun affectionately and replied, Yes, master. Hong Yunhe said to Hong Qingyun, Qingyun, if you run into any trouble this time, I'll definitely help you solve it. Thank you very much, second uncle. Hong Qingyun smiled at Hongyun River. Hongyun River's surname wasn't originally Hong. He was the second disciple of Hong Wujian, but later changed his surname to Hong. As a person, he was very respectful to Hong Wujian and listened to him. Because Hong Wujian doted on Hong Qingyun, Hongyun River doted on Hong Qingyun as well. He even treated Hong Qingyun as his own son. Hongyun River knew that Hong Wujian had asked him to take action because Hong Qingyun had hit a wall. Otherwise, with his status, Hong Wujian wouldn't have asked him to take action. We are the Tianyuan Kingdom's army. We are here to exterminate the rebels. Citizens of the Tianyuan Kingdom, kneel down. Sun Shangxiang had gone to chase after the first princess, so he didn't come to the Tianyuan royal city. Song Xiaotian led the army and charged towards the Tianyuan royal city. At this moment, Song Xiaotian stood outside the Tianyuan royal city and shouted. At this moment, there wasn't a single guard in the Tianyuan royal city. As for the commoners, they immediately knelt down when they heard Song Xiaotian's words. Attack the city. Don't hurt the commoners. Kill anyone who dares to enter the city. Song Xiaotian pulled out his sword and shouted at the Tianyuan royal city's gates. Following Song Xiaotian's order, the army behind him surged into the city. Song Xiaotian's army quickly took control of the 4 city gates. Song Xiaotian even led an army to attack the imperial palace and directly occupied it. After all the soldiers in the Tianyuan royal city who were capable of fighting had been taken away by the first princess. Even all the young adults in the Tianyuan royal city had been taken away by the first princess. Apart from the old, weak, sick, and disabled, there were only women and children left in the Tianyuan royal city. Marshal, a large number of corpses of officials have been found in a public square. A soldier reported to Song Xiaotian. What? Let's go take a look. Hearing the soldier's report, Song Xiaotian immediately followed behind the soldier. Song Xiaotian looked at the corpses on the ground thoughtfully. It seems like the first princess camp isn't all peaceful. Song Xiaotian collected his thoughts and looked at the soldier behind him. How's the control of the Tianyuan royal city? Reporting to the marshal, the various legion commanders have sent news. The Tianyuan royal city, including the royal palace, is under my complete control. Everyone who can be of use has been captured. The soldier hurriedly replied when he heard Song Xiaotian's question. Well done. Song Xiaotian nodded in satisfaction when he heard the soldier's report. At the same time, he said, Hurry up and report to the Lord that the Tianyuan royal city has been taken over. We welcome the Lord into the city. Yes. Hearing Song Xiaotian's words, one of the soldiers left immediately. Old man, the Tianyuan royal city has been taken over. We should go back. Yi Hao came to Emperor Tianyuan's bedroom and said to Emperor Tianyuan, who was lying on the sickbed. After so many days, Yi Hao and Emperor Tianyuan's relationship had improved. Otherwise, Yi Hao wouldn't have addressed Emperor Tianyuan as old man. Emperor Tianyuan's condition had worsened over the past few days. Of course, Yi Hao was also very concerned about Emperor Tianyuan's health. Therefore, Yi Hao found a lot of elixirs and gave them to Emperor Tianyuan. Those elixirs were all healing elixirs. However, when he gave them to Emperor Tianyuan, they didn't seem to have any effect. Under Emperor Tianyuan's persuasion, Yi Hao could only give up. Looking at Emperor Tinyuan's condition, it was obvious that Emperor Tinyuan's life was hanging by a thread. This made Yi Hao very frustrated. However, since the elixirs didn't work, there was nothing he could do. However, Yi Hao knew that Emperor Tianyuan always had a wish, and that was to return to the Tianyuan royal city. Even if he died, he wanted to die in the Tianyuan royal city and not outside. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.